Chapter 28:18. Hearing the young lady's serious tone, Diemo brows rose slightly, especially after hearing the young lady's serious words. Unknowingly, a smile appeared in his eyes. Yiqing Luo leaned close to his ear and couldn't see his expression. But Miaoji could see it clearly. She couldn't help but sigh in her heart. The overlord was like a madman, pampering a young lady named Yiqing Luo and pampering her dearly. From the looks of it now, it was indeed true. Everyone could see that. The relationship between the two of them was really good, without any fake feelings. When Yiqing Luo moved her little head away, she raised her head and looked at Diemo solemnly. The man had already adjusted the emotions in his eyes. He looked noble and indifferent, like an ascetic young master. Diemo pursed his thin lips as he raised his slender fingers and flicked fiercely on Yiqing Luo's forehead. His voice was deep as he said slowly, "All right." Yiqing Luo. Such a straightforward reply. Why did it make her feel as though she had fallen into a wolf's pit? She felt that Diemo had been rejecting her suggestions in various ways, just to tempt her to say this sentence? No matter what. After hearing Diemo finally nodding his head in agreement, Miaoji couldn't wait any longer as she invited the both of them to Sacred Maiden's courtyard. Sacred Maiden's status in the Miao tribe was extremely high. Because of that, the place where she stayed was the best location in the entire Miao tribe. And she had her own courtyard, far away from the other tribesmen. Outside the Sacred Maiden's courtyard was a huge nursery. The things planted in the nursery made Yiqing Luo curious. Those seedlings weren't the usual emerald green, but a kind of almost blood red. It looked extremely horrifying. Miaoji took a look at the nursery as her lips curled. These are the food for the goo worms, used to nurture adult goo worms. The three of them walked past the nursery and entered the courtyard. It was another huge, lush garden like a forest. There was only one small path for people to pass through. On both sides of the small path, there were white hemp ropes which formed into a large net, blocking everything tightly. Through the web-like hemp rope, Yiqing Luo could see that the lush garden was densely packed with thousands of worms, crawling and squirming. Be careful. Don't touch the insect webs on both sides. Miaoji reminded them gently, without any airs of a saintess. I'm sorry for making you come to such a dangerous place. It's just that. I don't want a fourth person to know what I want to tell you. It's all right. Yiqing Luo's gaze swept past those wriggling various goo worms. It's not bad to come here to broaden my horizons. As Yiqing Luo was speaking, her eyes had been studying the worm web, on how it prevented those goo worms from crawling out. He did not pay attention to his feet for a moment. He stepped on a branch that had spread out from the worm web. Yiqing Luo staggered as she fell forward. No matter how fast her reaction was, unfortunately, this small path was too narrow. She didn't have anything to hold on to, and she was even more worried that she would pull down the surrounding insect webs. He thought that he would fall to the ground. However, in the next instant, Yiqing Luo felt a tightness around her waist. Immediately, the scent of a man's sandalwood scent wafted over. She crashed into Diemo chest. The two of them stabilized their footsteps. Yiqing Luo heaved a sigh of relief as she raised her head, and was just about to express her thanks. Chapter 28:19. Yiqing Luo's heart tightened as she speedily withdrew from Diemo embrace. "Xian, what's wrong with you? Where do you feel uncomfortable?" Diemo did not answer. He leaned against the insect web behind him, his body stiff and motionless. "Are you guys okay?" Miaoji quickly turned around and walked over. When she saw Diemo back leaning against the insect web, she stretched out her hand, wanting to support him. These insect webs are made from medicinal herbs which are the nemesis of goo worms. They are very sturdy and won't be damaged by collisions. It doesn't matter even if someone touches these insect webs, as it won't cause any harm to the body. But Miaoji's hand had yet to touch Diemo. Diemo had already braced his body and dodged to the side. He dodged. Diemo tall and sturdy body staggered and swayed. If it wasn't for Yiqing Luo's quick reflexes to support him, he would probably be unable to stand steadily. Sacred Maiden, this insect web, after touching it, is there really no effect? Yiqing Luo wrapped her arms around Diemo Xian's tall body, pulling him away from the insect web. Her expression was extremely ugly and her eyes were covered in frost. Miaoji furrowed her brows and said with certainty, "I can confirm that I made these insect webs with my own hands. There's no mistake." After a pause, Miaoji looked at the overlord, whose huge body was pressing on top of the young girl. A trace of doubt flashed in her eyes. "Unless the overlord is. Where is the nearest room in the courtyard? Go there now. There seems to be something wrong with Xian's body." Yiqing Luo interrupted Miaoji's words as she placed all her attention on Diemo Xian. The man on top of her felt as if his body was on fire and extremely hot. His breathing was also very heavy. "Come with me." Miaoji also knew that Diemo Xian wasn't willing to let anyone other than Yiqing Luo touch him, so she quickly led the way. Yiqing Luo supported the man, or more accurately, she carried the man. Diemo Xian's consciousness was obviously no longer conscious. His tall body and his strength were almost completely pressed down on her. Yiqing Luo knew that her strength was definitely not small. Casually grabbing a person's neck and lifting them up was also a very easy thing to do. But when he was carrying Diemo Xian, she only felt he was almost overwhelmed to the point of suffocation. She carried the man and followed Miaoji for about the time it took for half an incense stick to burn. After passing through the garden filled with insect webs, there was a row of rooms on the right. Miaoji asked Yiqing Luo to help Diemo Xian to lie on the bed. "Can you remove the overlord's mask?" Yiqing Luo's fingers tightened as she bent down and removed the mask from Diemo Xian's face. That peerless face was reflected in her eyes. However, this usually expressionless face was now filled with emotions. At this moment, his face was as pale as paper. His brows were tightly knitted together as if he was in great pain. Looking at the man's tightly knitted brows, Yiqing Luo's heart thumped. "Little Luo," the man on the bed called out subconsciously. His hoarse voice was filled with immense pain. Yiqing Luo's eyes turned sour when she heard that call. She squatted by the bed and reached out to hold the man's hand, pressing it against her cheek. "Xian, I'm here. Tell me if you're feeling unwell." Yiqing Luo had yet to finish her words of consolation. Suddenly, her shoulder was pressed down by a palm. Miaoji's solemn voice floated over her head. "Don't move, let me take a look." Chapter 28:20. Yiqing Luo was stunned as she quickly rolled up Diemo Xian's wide sleeves. The moment her gaze touched the man's wrist, Yiqing Luo's throat tightened as her pupils unconsciously enlarged. She saw. On the man's wrist, there was a red line like a blood thread, extending from his palm to his wrist. On one look, it was as though Diemo Xian's hand had split open with a cut. It was extremely ghastly. Yiqing Luo could clearly see that the line of blood was still spreading towards his arm, although the speed was very slow. But Yiqing Luo could determine that this line of blood would spread to his shoulder in less than a joss stick's time. "What is this?" Yiqing Luo glanced sideways as she looked at Miaoji. "Indeed. I guessed correctly." Miaoji's eyes sunk when she saw that red line. "There are goo worms in Diemo Xian's body and it's an extremely insidious poison, right?" It wasn't a big deal for a normal person to touch the worm web, but Diemo Xian had the love and centrifugal worm in his body. At the moment when he touched the worm web, the medicinal effect of the goo worm's nemesis flowed through the skin and into Diemo Xian's body. The love and centrifugal worm would be stimulated by this medicinal effect at the same time. Hearing Miaoji's explanation, Yiqing Luo's heart tightened. "Then is there any way to alleviate it?" "I'll light a stalk of tranquilizer to temporarily let the goo worms in Diemo Xian's body settle down first." Miaoji took out an incense burner from the side and placed it by the bedside. Yiqing Luo took a look. That was a square-shaped incense block and the smell was very strange. She took a look at Miaoji. Although she was sure that Miaoji cared about Miaoyi a lot and would not have any ill intentions towards her and Diemo Xian. But after all, regarding the art of goo worms, it was something she wasn't good at, so she couldn't fully trust it. Yiqing Luo asked Old Man Song in her consciousness. "You lass, you're really reckless." Knowing that Diemo Xian's body was implanted with love and centrifugal worm, you still let him come to this place full of goo worms. After Old Man Song was awakened by Yi Qing Luo, he sensed the surrounding atmosphere and couldn't help but mumbled a few words. Old Man Song's consciousness swept towards the direction of the goo worm incense. That is an ordinary incense. It can be used to suppress the goo worms in Di Emotien's body. He watched as Miaoji lit the incense and placed it beside the bed. Yi Qing Luo was just about to ask about Di Emotien's situation. Miaoji's gaze was fixed on her. There's a soul searching for in Gongxiang. It's you? Whose soul do you carry with you? As soon as she said that, she quickly retracted her gaze and realized something. She smiled apologetically and said, "Sorry, I shouldn't have asked that." She lowered her eyes, and her face was as gentle as water. "You and I have just met, and the person who has been poisoned is a venerable sovereign. It's reasonable for you to be wary of me." Yi Qing Luo squinted her eyes as she silently tried to guess the meaning behind Miaoji's words. Why could Miaoji sense Old Man Song's existence? Goo worms don't necessarily have to be used to control people. There are also goo worms that specialize in controlling souls. There is a soul goo here that can sense my presence. Old Man Song was also shocked. The saintess of the Miao Gu clan is indeed an existence that can ascend to the upper realm. She even knows how to nurture things like soul goo. Yi Qing Luo pursed her pink lips as her eyes fixed on Miaoji. Chapter 28-21. I know you want to talk to me about Yi. Yi Qing Luo retracted her gaze from Miaoji and looked back at the man lying on the bed as her voice was very soft. Your relationship with Yi. If I didn't guess wrongly, even if you're not mother and daughter, but you were once as close as mother and daughter. As Yi Qing Luo said that, she stretched out her hand again and held Di Emotien's scorching hot palm. After the incense was ignited, Di Emotien's tightly knitted brows eased slightly. Only, the man's temperature was unable to cool down for a long time. She hoped that Di Emotien could feel that she was by his side, using her willpower to withstand the stimulation of the love and centrifugal worm. Am I very obvious? Miaoji gave a bitter smile behind her. Yi's attitude towards me is so cold. How can you still tell our relationship? Yi Qing Luo didn't look at her as her voice was slightly gloomy. The onlooker sees the game more clearly. I can tell that Yi isn't cold towards you, but she can't accept you appearing as the sacred lady. Miaoji was stunned as though her thoughts were exposed as she lowered her eyelids. After some time, she sighed softly as a sliver of melancholy and uneasiness flashed in her eyes. Miss Yi, putting aside the sacred lady's identity, can I ask you for a favor as a senior? Yi Qing Luo looked at her sideways. Miaoji's lips moved. Yi trusts you very much, I hope. You can help me to restore the relationship between me and Yi. I don't want to leave Nirvana realm with any regrets. Seeing Miao Yi return to the Miao tribe and shed away the immaturity and naivety from before, she had become able to take charge. Miaoji's heart was gratified and excited, but also melancholy and helpless. Melancholy, she had never participated in Miao Yi's changes, but she was unable to participate in Miao Yi's changes. Restore the relationship? Yi Qing Luo found it funny as she raised her brows. Yi obviously doesn't hold any hope towards you, since you're about to leave Nirvana realm. Why do you need to give her unnecessary hope before you leave and increase her sadness? I know. I let her down in the past, but I'm Yi's only family in this world. I don't want her to feel that she has no one to worry about in this world other than the two of you. Miaoji's eyes were complicated. Moreover, Yi has become the Miao tribe's holy maiden. 50 years later, she will be able to ascend to the upper realm. I will be waiting for her there. Yi Qing Luo pursed her pink lips and didn't reply immediately. Miaoji's feelings for Miao Yi did not seem fake. Moreover, Miaoji was right. Except for the dying Miao Yixiong, Miaoji was Miao Yi's only family. Miao Yi indeed had a deep grudge against Miaoji. However, if he really didn't care about Miaoji, why would he pay attention to her attitude? Pay attention to Miaoji's emotions. Furthermore, because of Miaoji, he even attempted to give up on the saintess selection. If he really didn't care, that way his emotions wouldn't be affected. If you can help me and calm Yi down so that we can meet and talk about the venomous insect poison in Dizun's body, I can help. Miao Ji saw that Yiqing Luo wasn't speaking for a long time, and her hands were tightly clasped together, as her voice sounded a little bitter. Apparently, she didn't want to use this kind of transaction method to beg Yiqing Luo for help. But she had no other choice. Chapter 28-22. Are you sure you can cure Xian? Yiqing Luo followed Miao Ji's words and continued, not only to give Miao Ji a way out. Most importantly, Dmo Xian's poison could be cured as soon as possible. When Miao Yi became the Sacred Maiden, she would go to the Sacred Maiden Pavilion to find the cure. It would take too long. Moreover, Long Yunzhan was still waiting for her to bring Miao Yi back to suppress the poison in his body. If Miao Ji could cure Dmo Xian in advance, time would be much more relaxed. But facing Yiqing Luo's hopeful gaze, Miao Ji's face revealed an obvious guilty expression. I'm sorry, cure. I can't do it. Yiqing Luo's heart, which had been lifted up, felt as though it was being strangled by something fiercely as her throat tightened. Can't do it? Miao Ji's Sacred Maiden said she couldn't cure Xian? Meaning, the poison in Xian's body. Even the Sacred Maiden couldn't cure it? No, don't misunderstand. Seeing Yiqing Luo's exquisite face turning pale in an instant as her eyes widened in shock in her lifeless look, Miao Ji immediately opened her mouth to explain. What I mean is not that the Overlord's poison can't be cured, but I can't personally cure the Overlord's poison. This time round, Miao Ji was too embarrassed to interrupt her as she spoke swiftly. I don't know what the poison in the Overlord's body is, nor do I know what method was used to implant it into the Overlord's body. From the Overlord's intense projection of the worm web, to the point that even a powerful Overlord is unable to control the poison, I can conclude that the poison in the Overlord's body is not simple. As she said that, her gaze fell onto Dmo Xian. That revealed half of his arm. The red bloodlines which kept spreading had stopped at his wrist, and didn't spread any further. She sighed softly. Such a complicated poison, the method to cure it is also very complicated. I don't have much time left in Nirvana realm, so I really have no way to cure the Overlord. Then, Yiqing Luo's throat moved, and after she spat out a word, she felt her throat tightening. After Yi becomes the Sacred Maiden, I will tell her the method. Miao Ji looked at the young lady whose face was gradually regaining its color. I knew Yi's innate talent since she was born, so if I pass it to her, she will definitely do better than me. Yiqing Luo lowered her eyes. She looked at the man on the bed quietly, and Zhongxiang had already played its role. The painful expression on the man's face eased up a lot. His tightly furrowed and twisted brows slowly smoothed out. Her fingertips slowly probed towards Dmo Xian's wrist. When it touched that line of blood, the protruding sensation made her slightly startled. This bloodline seemed to have grown out from Dmo Xian's body. It felt very strange to the touch. Goosebumps rose all over her body. However, it was fortunate that he was able to. This line of blood did not seem to have any intention of continuing to spread. Otherwise, she really didn't know what would happen when the bloodline spread to her shoulders, or even her head. Looks like she wanted to persuade Miao Yi to give Miao Ji a chance to resolve the misunderstanding. It was not only because of Miao Yi, but also because she cared about Miao Ji. If he wanted to cure Dmo Xian earlier, Miao Ji had to get along with Miao Yi peacefully. Miao Yi also had to learn the method of curing the goo from Miao Ji seriously. Chapter 28-23. Miao Ji's expression changed slightly. She clenched her fists even tighter. Her fingertips turned white, with blue veins popping out. Between his eyes, there was a thin layer of mist. Yiqing Luo didn't rush her, quietly letting her immerse herself in her own thoughts and memories of the past. After a long time, Miao Ji closed her eyes and slowly opened her mouth. Mixed with a sigh, it was filled with extreme bitterness. Miao Ji and Miao Yi's relationship was as Yiqing Luo expected. Not a mother and daughter relationship, but they were indeed like mother and daughter. Miao Ji was Miao Yi's biological mother, Miao Yuan's biological sister, which was also Miao Yi's aunt. But to put it more accurately, Miao Ji should be considered as Miao Yi's master. Most of Miao Yi's witchcraft was taught by Miao Ji. Miao Yi's biological mother wasn't a Miao clansman. but was saved by Miao Yixiong when he was outside, rushing about for the development of the Miao tribe. Miao Yuan and Miao Ji were brought into the Miao tribe by Miao Yixiong. Their names were also given by Miao Yixiong. Their days in the Miao tribe were not easy for the two sisters, because the Miao clansmen were too united. They were not willing to acknowledge them who came from other tribes. Because of this, when Miao Yuan and Miao Yixiong fell in love and became pregnant, none of the Miao clansmen acknowledged Miao Yuan's identity as the clan leader's wife. Of course, Miao Yixiong was only interested in Miao Yuan's beauty, to have a taste and play. The woman whom Miao Yixiong wanted to marry was naturally a woman who could help him stabilize his position as the clan leader. To him, Miao Yuan was just a plaything. These words, Miao Ji persuaded Miao Yuan. But Miao Yuan deeply loved this hero who saved her, and didn't believe her sister's words. With the child in her belly, she looked forward to her hero marrying her. But what Miao Yuan waited for was not Miao Yixiong's sedan chair, but Miao Yixiong's chosen wife, with the same big belly, came to the door with her head held high. She claimed that she was under Miao Yixiong's order to abort the bastard in Miao Yuan's belly. The reason for the abort: it was to let the child in her belly become the legitimate eldest miss of the Miao tribe. How could Miao Yuan be willing to submit? The two sisters accidentally entered the land of the ancient Gu king when they were trying to escape. Coincidentally, the ancient Gu king was molting and accepting a new life. He heard that Miao Yuan and Miao Ji had entered the land of the ancient Gu king. Miao Yixiong and the elders hurried over. Miao Yuan was so nervous that his stomach bumped into King of Venomous Worm's half-molted shell. The sharp shell cut through the skin on Miao Yuan's stomach. A drop of blood entered Gu King's body through the half-molted shell. Great Elder Miao saw this scene unfold before his eyes. The Gu King, who had sucked in the blood from Miao Yuan's stomach, was not agitated at all. Moreover, Miao Yuan was not corroded by the poison of the Gu King. Great Elder Miao immediately decided that the child in Miao Yuan's womb was recognized by the ancient Gu King, and was the only direct descendant of the Miao tribe. Madame Miao's face instantly turned pale. Madame Miao was also very powerful in the Miao tribe. However, no one dared to act rashly against a child recognized by the ancient Gu King. In the end, he could only hide Miao Yi's identity after Miao Yuan gave birth to her. Until Madame Miao's child, Miao Rongrong, was born. Miao Yi gradually appeared in the eyes of the Miao tribe. In fact, Miao Yi was born 2 months earlier than Miao Rongrong. However, for Miao Rongrong's legitimate misidentity. Chapter 28-24. However, Miao Yi gave up her identity. She did not get the reward she deserved. No one in the Miao tribe was willing to accept a second miss who was half a foreigner. No one acknowledged Miao Yi's identity. No one gave Miao Yi the respect she deserved as a second Mississippi. In addition, Madame Miao hated the Miao sisters and Miao Yi. Because Miao Yi was the child protected by the Gu King, Madame Miao did not dare to go too far. But in the dark, he had set up many obstacles for the sisters and their children. He had even thought of a vicious plan to kill Miao Yuan and her sister. She could not touch Miao Yi. She could at least touch the sisters, right? As long as the two sisters were killed, a child that had just been born would not live for long. With this thought in mind, Madame Miao's attacks became more and more vicious. Most importantly, after Miao Yixiong knew what Madame Miao had done, he did not stop her at all. This also showed his attitude to the Miao tribesmen even more clearly. Not only Madame Miao's henchmen would come looking for trouble, even the other Miao tribesmen who could not stand the sight of outsiders would humiliate them several times. Fortunately, Miao Ji was smart and knew to attract the elders again and again, blocking several attempts to kill her. After repeated setbacks, Miao Yi almost died in Madame Miao's hands several times. Miao Yuan gradually grew up. Miao Yuan was really silly when it came to love. But as a mother, from a mother's point of view, love and whatnot were all fleeting clouds. Just like that, under the protection of the Miao sisters, Miao Yi lived to the age of 5. Miao Ji had a deep understanding of the Miao tribe's reality and their terrible faces in the past few years. They wanted to leave the Miao tribe. But those who entered the Miao tribe, without the permission of the tribe leader and the elders, could not even take a step out. If they did not leave the Miao tribe, they had to establish a foothold in the Miao tribe. They could not make the Miao tribe recognize their bloodline. Then they could only start with the Gu tribe. Back then, they were forced by Madame Miao to hide in the ancient Gu king's land. Miaoji kept an eye out. When Miao Yuan's belly was cut by the Gu king's shell, she stepped forward to support him, leaving behind a drop of her own blood. From then on, Miaoji could clearly feel that she was very sensitive to the aura of Gu worms. Even after Madame Miao tried to poison them several times, she could also restrain those Gu worms and take them for her own use. At first, Miaoji was not interested in the Miao tribe's Gu. After discovering these changes, she was only wary of Madame Miao's henchmen and had no intention of learning from Miao Gu. However, Madame Miao was overbearing, and Miao Yi, who had escaped death several times. This made Miaoji determined to use voodoo to raise their status. Thus, Miaoji began to secretly learn Miao Gu's voodoo techniques. The Miao tribesmen did not take Miaoji and the other two seriously at all. From time to time, Miaoji would act as a cleaning maid, entering the Miao Stockade village's Gu Book Pavilion to clean up. This also gave Miaoji more opportunities to come into contact with Miao Gu's knowledge. In the next few months, her voodoo skills improved by leaps and bounds. Ever since Miao Yi was born, Miaoji knew that her niece was a direct descendant of the Miao tribe that the king of venomous worms had recognized. Her talent for Miao Gu was definitely above hers. Chapter 28-25. This made Miaoji more and more sure of her guess. So Miaoji taught Miao Yi all the knowledge she knew about the Gu. She also asked Miao Yi to hide her knowledge of the Gu as much as possible. The environment she grew up in made Miao Yi know how to observe people at a young age, and how not to let her mother and aunt worry about her. Naturally, she obediently listened to her aunt's words. Even Miao Yuan did not know that his daughter had begun to learn the Gu of the Miao Gu. Another year passed like this. Miaoji's Gu was no worse than most of the Miao people. Miao Yi was indeed a talented direct descendant of the Miao people, but she learned knowledge from Miaoji for a year. Now her knowledge of the Gu had far surpassed Miao Rongrong, who was carefully cultivated by Miao Yixiong and Mrs. Miao. Miaoji was very pleased about this. At this time, Miao Yi and Miaoji's relationship was undoubtedly the best. They got along every day and discussed the Gu of the Miao Gu. It could be said that even Miao Yuan was a little jealous of their intimacy. All of this, when did it start to change? It was when Miao Yi was almost 7 years old. Miaoji brought Miao Yi to the land of the ancient Gu king, and learned the knowledge of the Gu as usual. But she met the saintess at that time, Miao Jingyi. Miao Jingyi encountered Miao Yi's Gu of the Miao talent. After hearing Miao Yi's identity, she decisively proposed that Miao Yi be her candidate for the next saintess. At this time, Miao Jingyi had reached the qualification to ascend to the upper realm, but she had to stay in the Miao tribe for 50 years. Now there were still a few years, but after seeing Miao Yi, Miao Jingyi had another plan. Miao Jingyi wanted to pass the position of the saintess to Miao Ji, and take charge of the position for 7 years. In the saintess selection ceremony 7 years later, she would pass it to Miao Yi. This plan sounded like a way for Miao Ji and Miao Yi to change their situation. But Miao Jingyi's request was not only this. The reason why Miao Jingyi chose Miao Yi was that Miao Yi was a direct descendant protected by the Gu king. She had been the saintess of the Miao tribe for 40 years, and could not get close to the Gu king. She wanted to see Miao Yi borrow the power of the Gu king. She wanted to see the connection between Miao Yi and the Gu king. Although, since Miao Yi was born, the elders had mentioned that Miao Yi was the direct descendant of King of Venomous Worms. But in fact, they didn't really touch the Gu king. They didn't dare to get close to him. Let Miao Shiyi see the connection between Miao Yi and King of Venomous Worms. What if all his guesses were wrong? Miao Yi had come into contact with the King of Venomous Worms, and was corroded by its poison. What should she do then? Miaoji did not dare to take this risk. Miao Yi was everything to her, and Miao Yuan. She couldn't risk Miao Yi for the sake of her future status. However, Miao Shiyi was eager to ascend. Miaoji did not reply. Thus, he took the initiative to look for Miao Yuan. Only then did Miao Yuan realize that his sister and daughter had actually secretly put in so much effort for this family. After hearing the conditions for Miao Yi to contact the Gu King, Miao Yuan refused without hesitation. Miao Shuyi didn't insist. She just said, "Which expert doesn't walk on the edge of danger? If a talented Miao Gu genius like Yi is buried because of you, are you sure she won't blame you when she grows up?" He wouldn't blame them. Chapter 28-26. That was right. If Miao Yi grew up and found out that he had rejected her chance to become strong, would he blame her? She didn't know. Unable to answer this question, Miao Ji was also unable to make a decision. The 7-year-old Miao Yi, who had been sensitive since she was a child, sensed the atmosphere. Miao Shuyi's visit to Miao Yuan and Miao Ji had aroused Madame Miao's vigilance. Once again, he was ruthless. In order to protect Miao Yi, Miao Yuan was seriously injured. Only then did Miao Yi know that Miao Shuyi asked her to prove that she was related to Gu King. She looked at her mother, who was lying on the bed with a pale face but was always thinking about her. Miao Yi chose to agree with Miao Shuyi's proposal. She was still young, but after all, the environment she grew up in made her very clear. In the Miao tribe, if he wanted to stand firm, if he wanted to gain the recognition of the Miao tribe, if he wanted to protect his mother and aunt, if he wanted to avenge his mother, she had to stand at the highest position in the Miao tribe, the holy maiden of the Miao tribe. She wanted to become the saintess of the Miao tribe. Madame Miao must pay the price. She wanted to make that so-called father and sister regret treating the three of them with such an attitude. She wanted to protect her mother and aunt. While Miao Yuan was not paying attention, Miao Yi went to look for Miao Shuyi. Miao Shuyi had been waiting for Miao Yuan and Miao Ji's answer. However, Miao Yi came alone to reply. He valued Miao Yi more and more. Miao Yi did not disappoint Miao Shuyi. She contacted Gu King in front of Miao Shuyi. Moreover, it did not cause the king of venomous worms to counterattack. When Miao Ji arrived at the land of the Gu King, what he saw was Miao Yi putting her hand on the giant king of venomous worms. The hearts of the people of the Hmong village almost stopped beating. Miao Ji rushed over to stop him. However, Miao Shuyi stopped her. She heard Miao Shuyi muttering to herself. As expected, it's her, the destined holy maiden Miao Gu. Miao Ji did not understand what he meant. She only knew that when she came to her senses, Miao Shuyi had already held Miao Yi's hand and walked in front of her. Miao Shuyi's eyes were filled with smiles. This child is the next Holy Virgin. There are only 4 years left until the Holy Virgin selection. In these 4 years, I'll have to trouble you to help her grow up to the point where she has the qualifications to become the Holy Daughter. In a daze, Miao Ji brought Miao Yi back. Then he was secretly summoned by Miao Shuyi. On the same day, Miao Shuyi gave her saintess position as well as the Gu worms that she had nurtured for decades to Miao Ji. He even told Miao Yi would become the master of Gu King. However, with Miao Yi's current mental strength, she could not control the Gu King for her own use. If he wanted Miao Yi to contract with the king of venomous worms before she became the Holy Virgin, the only way was for Miao Yi to lose all support and grow up alone. That was to say, Miao Ji, who had become the Holy Maiden, could no longer take care of Miao Yi as the Holy Maiden. And Miao Yuan could no longer protect Miao Yi. Everything, let Miao Yi grow on her own. He could increase his mentality and form a contract with the ancient Gu King. Miao Ji hesitated. Miao Yuan, who was seriously injured in bed, made the decision for her. Miao Yuan knew very well that he could not survive this serious injury. Miao Yi had such a chance now. As long as she became the holy maiden of the Miao tribe in the future, Miao Yi's future would be peaceful. Chapter 28-27. Miao Yuan knew that becoming the saintess was the greatest guarantee for Miao Yi's future. So she gritted her teeth, with her seriously injured body, and Miao Ji left the small courtyard where she lived with Miao Yi, moved to the place where the saintess lived. In the first few days, Miao Yi thought her mother was taken away by her aunt for treatment. But 7 days passed. She still did not hear any news about her mother and aunt. Miao Yi also felt something was wrong. She was only 7 years old, and she was famous for being a waste. The Miao people did not treat Miao Yi as the second miss of Miao tribe, nor were they wary of her. Miao Yi asked around. From the gossip of the Miao people, she got some information. For example, because of Madame Miao's ruthless attack this time, Miao Yuan was seriously injured and on the verge of death. Miao Yuan was afraid, so he handed his dying sister to Madame Miao. And on the day he handed her over, Miao Yuan died. The cause of death was unknown, but the Miao people knew. Madame Miao hated Miao Yuan so much. How could Miao Yuan survive in her hands? As for Miao Ji, because she handed over her sister, it seemed that she was rewarded by Madame Miao and went to live a good life. Miao Yi could not be sure whether these gossips were true or false. And the only thing she could be sure of was, Miao Rongrong had come to her with her fangs and claws bared. Her mother was indeed dead. Indeed, Miao Ji handed her to Madame Miao personally. At that moment, Miao Yi's heart was completely swallowed by darkness. She became a child without a father or mother. She became the lowest person in Miao tribe. Anyone could trample on her pride at will. She promised her mother, before she could confirm that she was the saintess, "Don't show your talent and strength in Gu." She always remembered this advice and paid a real price, no matter how hard the days were. In the eyes of outsiders, she was still a waste to the point that everyone could bully. But in private, Miao Yi never relaxed her absorption of Miao tribe's Gu. She put all her effort into cultivation. She wanted to become the saintess of Miao tribe. Open and aboveboard. Kill Madame Miao, Miao Yixiong, Miao Rongrong. Then find Miao Ji and make her kneel in front of her mother's grave to apologize. To avenge his mother. The memories ended. After Miao Ji told him everything, her face was visibly relieved. It was probably because these words had been suppressed in his heart for far too long. She couldn't bear the pressure anymore. Yi didn't know that you were just acting as the sacred maiden for her for 4 years? After Yi Qingluo heard all the memories, she couldn't help but sigh in her heart. How fate made fools of people. Yes. Miao Ji shook her head. Yi Qingluo sighed. It was no wonder that Miao Yi would reveal such an expression when she saw Miao Ji. His hatred towards Miao Ji had risen so quickly in that instant. Miao Ji could be considered as her mother's murderer. How much he loved and respected Miao Ji. After seeing Miao Ji become the holy virgin of the Miao tribe, her hatred for Miao Ji deepened. In Miao Yi's heart, she must have thought, Miao Jining became the holy maiden of the Miao tribe. It was because he had handed over Miao Yuan that he had this opportunity. It was even more likely that he would feel. The position of saintess that Miao Shuyi had promised was given to her. But in the end, Miao Ji became the saintess. Then Miao Ji must have used some method to snatch the position which originally belonged to her. This misunderstanding. Chapter 28. Back then, why did you hand Yi's mother over to that Madame Miao? Although Yi Qingluo had some guesses, but she still wanted to hear it from Miao Ji personally. Miao Ji's eyes drooped down, her pale fingers curled up tightly. When she opened her mouth again, her voice was obviously bitter. That was sister's last request, I had no choice but to do so. Saying that, her voice was already choked with sobs. She stopped and closed her eyes, suppressing the grievance in her heart. For so many years, Miao Yi had been misunderstanding her. And she, for the sake of the big picture, swallowed all these grievances. And now, she could finally speak out this grievance. Sister, because of protecting Yi, was seriously injured. Even if she used medicinal pills to hang on, she would not live for more than a few days. Because she knew her own body, after sister asked me to bring her away from Yi, she took the initiative to send her to Madame Miao, to make a deal with Madame Miao. Madame Miao indeed hated sister. Sister's existence was like a constant reminder to her that her daughter was not the direct bloodline of the Gu king. Her daughter was not the proper eldest miss of the Miao family. When I acted according to sister's wishes, as long as we hand over sister, Madame Miao would use the Miao tribe's poison to swear not to hurt Yi. And also promised to let Yi live till 15 years old. Madame Miao agreed to it. After Miao Ji finished saying these, she was already sobbing. Memories of the past kept surfacing in his mind. and it kept replaying the scene of how she handed Miao Yuan over to Madame Miao, and also saw with her own eyes how her own sister died in Madame Miao's hands. Yiqing Luo remained silent. She guessed that Miao Ji handed Miao Yuan over, had a motive, but she didn't expect it would be for such a motive. Indeed, such a choice. If it was her, she would also do the same. Miss Yi. Miao Ji took a deep breath, stopping herself from losing her composure. One hand was still covering her mouth, as she choked and asked, even if everything had a reason, do you think, she will forgive me? Yiqing Luo pursed her lips tightly, not giving an immediate answer. Her clear eyes flickered, as she shifted her gaze towards Dmo Xian. She clenched the man's fingers tightly. Whether I forgive or not, it's not up to me to decide. After Yiqing Luo finished this sentence, her fingers clenched even tighter. She looked at the man's pale face. She recalled the pain she had felt earlier, and how she could only walk by relying on him. Her eyes flickered, but in the end, she still chose selfishness. I promise you that I will give you a chance to explain your misunderstanding calmly, but whether or not you can forgive her will depend on Yi's choice. After saying that, her gaze slowly turned to a certain direction outside the house. How long more do you plan to squat there and eavesdrop? Yiqing Luo's words had just landed. Miao Ji's entire body stiffened, as though she understood the meaning behind Dmo Xian's words. Her eyes suddenly widened as she looked towards the direction where Yiqing Luo's gaze had landed. The wind blew, bringing with it the fragrance of the surrounding grass and leaves that were the food of the goo worms. There was also the rustling sound of countless goo worms squirming. Even after staring for a long time, the figure that Zhang Xian had imagined did not appear before him. Miao Ji's initial nervousness gradually turned into disappointment. Chapter 28-29. Not coming out means that after you know the truth, you're unable to face your aunt? Yiqing Luo didn't mind Miao Ji's words as she continued looking at that direction. Or is it because, even after knowing the truth, you're still unable to forgive her? Miao Ji's expression froze on her face when she heard what she said. Her face started to turn pale. Her clenched fists clenched even tighter. Yiqing Luo was so certain. She was certain that Miao Yi was not far away from this guest room, which meant to say that all the memories she mentioned earlier, Miao Yi heard all of it. Miao Yi knew the cause and effect of everything. Was it as what Yiqing Luo said, unable to face her? Or was it because she was unable to forgive? In this uneasy atmosphere, the atmosphere was very tense. A young lady dressed in the Miao tribe's sacred maiden candidate's attire slowly walked into their sight. The young lady's face was filled with tears. A pair of beautiful eyes stared intently at Miao Ji, as though she was confirming something. When Miao Ji's gaze fell onto the young lady's face, she seemed to have turned into a fossil as she froze on the spot. Didn't you want a chance for the both of you to resolve the misunderstanding peacefully? Why are you still in a daze here for? Yiqing Luo shot a glance at Miao Ji as she spoke calmly. These two had been toyed with by fate, and there were too many misunderstandings between them. The matters between them, outsiders couldn't interfere. Only if the both of them were frank and open, saying out what was in their hearts, could it be resolved. Yiqing Luo had no intention to interfere in their grudges. Miao Ji's throat moved as her pale lips trembled slightly, but after some time, she couldn't spit out a single word. If one took a closer look, one would be able to tell. At this moment, Miao Ji's body was trembling slightly. One of them stiffened, not daring to open his mouth to break the silence. The other's face was filled with tears as he watched quietly. This situation lasted for almost half an incense stick of time. Yiqing Luo might as well take action directly as she threw the both of them out. Go, 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 don't disturb Xian's rest. Closing the room door, Yiqing Luo returned to the bed and sat down, one hand holding the man's wide palm, as though this was the only way to let him feel that she was by his side. But her butt hadn't even warmed up in time. Suddenly, he felt something tighten around his waist. Then he felt the world spin around him. Her body had already fallen onto the bed. The man's hot and hard body firmly fixed her delicate body between his arms. The familiar scent of sandalwood filled his nose. The man's long, ink-like hair cascaded down and landed on her face, stirring her skin. Yi Qingluo's pupils constricted through her hair. Her eyes reflected that peerless, noble, and indifferent face. It was Dmo Xian. He woke up. Yi Qingluo's eyes lit up slightly as she revealed a joyful look. Ah Xian, your body. What's wrong with this sovereign? Dmo Xian narrowed his long and narrow peach blossom eyes as his thin lips curved upwards. So impatient to fulfill your promise to this lord. Yi Qingluo's pupils shook. In his body, was it still the centrifugal goo that controlled it? Had he become the black-bellied, powerful overlord who had forgotten about her again? Why are you in a daze? Dmo Xian bent down and his thin lips came close to hers as he gave a low hoarse laugh. Racking your brains to get this sovereign into this small room, a lone man and woman. Chapter 28:30. That pair of dazzling peach blossom eyes were pitch black and heavy, shimmering flowing lights, revealing a demonic profoundness. Yi Qingluo had always been unable to resist Dmo Xian's handsome man trap. Her little heart was already thumping wildly. Especially, the man had intentionally suppressed his magnetic voice, using the originally normal words, instead of using that tone to make one blush. Yi Qingluo's cheeks were dyed red. The redder it was, the more unforgiving her mouth. If you're not willing to follow me into the small room, how can I bring you in? Dmo Xian raised his brows, looking at the young lady's blushing face, but pretending to be calm, not willing to suffer any loss. She only felt that in her heart, a certain place was gradually softening. His eyes grew deeper as he gazed deeply into her charming eyes. Since the timing and location are favorable, this lord will not stand on ceremony and accept the benefits that you and this lord have exchanged. Saying that, he had already lowered his head, as his lips were right next to her ear. The rich scorching aura enveloped her entirely. Yi Qingluo's petite body trembled slightly, as she was slightly dazed by the man's teasing, but she was still conscious. When his lips were about to move downwards, Yi Qingluo raised her hand, as she hugged his head, stopping him from continuing. The man's action paused, as his thin lips intentionally brushed past her ear, as he immediately raised his head. That cold and noble face was closer to her eyes by a few inches. His lips curled into a devilish smile. His voice was low and hoarse, deliberately seductive. Why? You and I are not trading. Yi Qingluo pressed his head, as her voice also became extremely soft due to the man's deliberate teasing. His eyes flickered slightly, as he quietly looked at her. Yi Qingluo slowly propped herself up, as the hand that was hugging his head changed to grab his collar. You're my man no matter how you feel about me now. You belong to me. Her tone was extremely overbearing. Her eyes were curved, like a crafty fox. Dmo Xian, remember this, I can let you do whatever you want to me, including everything. Not because of the so-called trade between us, but because you're mine. She didn't want Dmo Xian to hug her at the same time. She only thought that the intimate relationship between them was because of a deal. No matter how bad Yi Qingluo was. If the other party was not Dmo Xian, it was also impossible for him to use himself as a so-called trading item. Dmo Xian's pupils shrank imperceptibly. A dark light flashed in his eyes. In the next instant, he pinched the girl's chin and pressed his lips against hers. This kiss wasn't gentle, but it wasn't overbearing either. Instead, it was a kind of thin, lingering kiss. The kiss made Yi Qingluo's brain turn slightly white as her eyes started to slacken. Their entwined hands gradually intertwined with each other's as they gently kissed. At the same time, the atmosphere between the two people who were chased out of the door was completely different and strange. Neither side said a word. It wasn't until the tightly shut door that the young girl let out a cry of surprise, followed by the young girl's coquettish murmur. Miao Yi finally realized something. She raised her hand and wiped the tears off her face. Then, she turned around and walked towards the other side of the courtyard. Chapter 28:31. However, Miao Yi's emotions were unstable. Before Miao Ji could stop her, she had already rushed into the courtyard that was blocked by the vines. Miao Yi's feet had already sensed danger when she had just stepped into the vines. She had an innate sensitivity towards goo worms. She quickly retracted her feet and took out a powder that could restrain goo worms from the brocade bag at her waist to counterattack. Miao Yi's reaction was indeed very fast. However, she was impulsive, and half of her feet had already stepped into the vines. Even if she counterattacked, on the vines, there were several black goo worms that were about the thickness of a finger, and they directly wrapped around Miao Yi's feet. Miao Yi's face was slightly pale, and she quickly sprinkled the powder on her feet. Suddenly, a hand stretched out and stopped her hand that was sprinkling the powder. Then she was brought into a warm embrace. You can't use the anti-goo powder. These are blood-sucking goo worms that move in groups. If you use the anti-goo powder to hurt one of them, thousands of blood-sucking goo worms will take revenge for you. The woman's gentle voice sounded beside her ears. Miao Yi's delicate body suddenly froze. She stood still in a daze. In her mind, a scene from a long time ago actually appeared. At that time, Miao Ji also held the little girl in her arms like this. Miao Ji used her unique gentle tone, patiently and seriously explaining the knowledge of goo worms that she did not understand. This scene. It had been a long time since she had felt it. Ugh! A muffled groan startled Miao Yi back to her senses. Miao Ji used all her strength to protect her in her arms. She directly used her hands to block the blood-sucking goo worms that climbed up for her. A few soft black goo worms instantly attached themselves to Miao Ji's fair arms. Almost in an instant, Miao Ji's hands quickly dried up. Aunt! Miao Yi's eyes widened, and she cried out in panic, trying to help her get rid of those blood-sucking goo worms. Miao Ji's hands firmly held her in place. Miao Yi curled up in her arms, unable to move at all. I'm fine. Miao Ji's voice was very soft, and there was a hint of sobbing. Don't be afraid, it's good that you're fine. As she spoke, the corners of her mouth lifted into a smile. She didn't seem to feel that she had been possessed by the blood-sucking goo. Her withered arm used the hand that was holding Miao Yi and pulled Miao Yi behind her. Stand there and don't move, Miao Ji said softly. When she was sure that Miao Yi was standing in a place that she thought was safe, only then did Miao Ji start to deal with the blood-sucking goo. A moment later, the blood-sucking goo were sealed back into the Poison Goo Institute. Miao Ji's face was extremely pale. She let out a sigh of relief. The feeling of losing too much blood rushed to his head. The dizziness in front of her caused her body to sway. Be careful. A pair of soft little hands caught her in time. Miao Ji was exhausted, but she forced herself to open her eyes. He glanced sideways and looked at the young girl beside him, whose eyes were filled with worry. His eyes were filled with tenderness. Yi, can you call me one more time? Miao Ji's voice was clearly choked with emotion. His eyes, which were filled with fatigue and lost their luster from time to time, were red-rimmed. Miao Yi felt her heart tighten. Her heart seemed to be fiercely strangled by something. Her nose also felt sour. Miao Yi moved her lips, but she couldn't say anything. After waiting quietly for a while, Miao Ji didn't hear Miao Yi call out the name that she had waited for so many years. Chapter 28:32. The corners of her lips curled into a reluctant arc as she spoke in a hoarse voice. No matter. It's all right if you don't want to. Aunt. Suddenly Miao Yi's voice interrupted Miao Ji's words. Miao Ji was stunned as tears rolled down from her eyes without any warning. She choked with sobs as her teary eyes looked at Miao Yi without blinking. You're forgiving me. Why did you do that? Miao Yi pursed her lips tightly as her eyes stared at Miao Ji's obviously withered hand. Do you think that I will forgive you just like this? Miao Ji's voice choked as her throat tightened. Miao Yi raised her hand and supported her as they walked towards Yi Qing Luo and Dmo Xian's room, which was the furthest away from the guest room. As they walked, the girl's icy cold voice was heard. I call you aunt because you are indeed my aunt. Even if I hate you, this is a fact that cannot be changed. Miao Ji's eyes turned redder as she opened her mouth to explain, but she didn't know how to explain. The two of them remained silent as they entered the room. Miao Yi helped Miao Ji to the seat as she held up her hand and checked it carefully. Rearing venomous worms in your own courtyard and you didn't prepare any antidote. My hand is fine. Miaoji shook her head as she lowered her eyes to look at her withered hand which was placed on the table. It'll be fine in a few days. Miao Yi pursed her lips as she didn't say another word. It was another silent atmosphere as it lingered between the two of them. Miaoji wanted to open her mouth to break the silence several times. But facing Miao Yi's expressionless face, all her courage was extinguished at this moment. Obviously, she wanted to sit together with Miao Yi and clarify all the misunderstandings in the past. Now this opportunity was right in front of her eyes. But she couldn't say a single word. This silence made Miaoji's heart feel even more uncomfortable. Finally, Miaoji couldn't take it anymore. Yi, did you hear what I said to Miss Yi? Amen. Miao Yi replied calmly. The sacred maiden selection ceremony had ended, and she wanted to be alone for a while. But when she saw Yi Qing Luo's Chi-Chi, that furry little ball, it was obviously here to comfort her. She thought about it and decided to look for Yi Qing Luo, to tell her about her relationship with Miao Ji. But he had not expected Miao Ji to take the initiative to look for Yi Qing Luo. She brought Chi-Chi and followed behind Yi Qing Luo and the others, all the way to Sacred Maiden's courtyard. He also heard all of Miao Ji's memories clearly. Then, Miao Ji's voice was hoarse. She paused and asked carefully, "So what do you think?" Miao Yi was silent for a moment. After a while he raised his head. Miao Yi's gaze was calm as she stared at Miao Ji. There was no expression on her face. "Aunt, although you didn't kill Mother with your own hands, it doesn't change the fact that you were an accomplice in her death." Miao Ji's throat tightened again, and she couldn't say anything else. That was right. No matter how righteous her reason for handing Miao Yuan over was, it couldn't change the fact that she had personally sent her sister to hell. "I don't blame you," Miao Yi continued. "But I can't forgive you, and I can't forgive myself." As she said that, her eyelids drooped. "If it wasn't for me, Mother wouldn't have died." Even though she was only 7 years old. But all the memories had long been engraved in her mind. Chapter 28:33. Her mother was seriously injured because she was protecting her. In order to protect her, her mother begged her aunt to use her own life to exchange for her safety for the next few years. Although her aunt was her helper, but the real culprit was her. She was unable to forgive her aunt, and even more unable to forgive herself. You can't think in this way." Miao Ji stuttered as she tried to persuade her. "Sister's death is not your fault, it's all my. I sent sister to Madame Miao's hands. You're right not to forgive me." Feeling Miao Ji's anxiety and worry, Miao Yi slowly shook her head. She understood Miao Ji's meaning. Miao Ji didn't wish for her to go against herself because of this matter. She would rather she blame her, rather than let her blame herself. Miao Yi closed her eyes, hiding the sadness in her eyes as she gave a low laugh. "Don't worry, Mother used her life to exchange for a future. I will not let Mother die in vain." As she said that, she slowly raised her eyes which had regained its calm. "I will complete Mother's dying wish, to take revenge for Mother, to become the Miao tribe's saintess." Miao Ji's lips squirmed a few times. Miao Yi had already interrupted her words. "Earlier in the house, I heard it too. Is it true that you have a way to detoxify the Overlord's poison?" Miao Ji swallowed the words that were in her mouth. "Qing Luo is my benefactor, and the Overlord is the person whom Qing Luo cares about the most. If you have a way, before you ascend, can you tell me about it?" Miao Yi continued. Miao Ji's lips trembled again and after some time, she spat out a word, "All right." Miao Yi looked at her injured hand. "After the blood-sucking worm's poison is detoxified, then detoxify the Overlord." Seeing that Miao Yi had placed all her thoughts on helping Dmo Xian detoxify the worm, in order to stay in Nirvana realm for the last few days, to get along well with Miao Yi, Miao Ji also shifted all her thoughts to the goo poison. What kind of worm was the Overlord in? What kind of person could plant a worm on the Overlord? Till now, she still didn't know what worm was in the Overlord. Centrifugal worm and love worm. Miao Yi said word by word. "The target is Qing Luo." Miao Ji's expression froze. "I thought His Majesty was poisoned by the heart separation spell, but there was also the love spell." How can anyone from the Miao tribe use these two forbidden goo techniques? Miao Rongrong and Miao Yixiong worked together. Miao Yi didn't explain the situation in detail. These two types of venomous worms are originally mutually restraining, and now both of them are in the overlord's body. Moreover, the target is Qing Luo. Love venomous worm makes the overlord obedient to Qing Luo, whereas venomous worm makes the overlord forget everything about Qing Luo. She paused for a moment. If this goes on for a long time, even the overlord's body will not be able to take it. Miaoji nodded solemnly. In fact, when Miaoji detected the centrifugal worm in Demo Xian's body, she was already astonished. An emperor who was poisoned by the centrifugal goo. To think that he could still be in such sweet love with Yi Qing Luo. It showed how deep the overlord's feelings for Yi Qing Luo were. Two kinds of venomous worms together, and the target is the same person. This kind of worm is even more troublesome to detoxify. Miaoji frowned. Let them rest in the Miao tribe for a few days. These few days, I'll go to the Saint Maiden Pavilion to research on a safer method. Miao Yi remained silent for a moment. Tomorrow after the Sacred Maiden ceremony, I'll accompany you. After tomorrow, she would be the Miao tribe's Sacred Maiden. She also had the right to enter the Saint Maiden Pavilion. Chapter 2834. In the other room, the entire room was filled with the scent of spring. The shadow of the bed fluttered as it shimmered. The silver robe and red shirt were intertwined. The young lady's cheeks were flushed red and her half-opened eyes were bewitching. The man on top of her was gently teasing the flame. Yi Qing Luo's mind was in a mess, but her consciousness was still awake. She tried to speak several times as her hands pushed against the man's chest. But before she could say a word, everything was sealed by a scorching aura that covered the sky and covered the earth. No, I can't. Between her murmurs, Yi Qing Luo panted heavily as she spat out two fragmented words. The man who was still kissing lifted his head. That handsome, godlike face was quietly reflected in her eyes. The man's peach blossom eyes were as calm as water without any ripples. He looked as though he wasn't tainted with the slightest bit of confusion. But if one looked closely, she could tell. In the depths of the man's tranquil eyes, there was a flickering flame. The corners of his lips were filled with a hint of mischievous air. Drops of sweat rolled down from his taut muscles. This was obviously the performance of the cloud power of emotions. No way. Demo Xian opened his mouth with a magnetic and seductive tone. Looks like I haven't worked hard enough. Teasing to such an extent. The young lady was still saying no way. Demo Xian could tell. This was a rejection, not a woman's irony in bed, but a real sense of no way. No way. This was the first woman who rejected him? No. Yi Qing Luo tried her best to stay awake as she trembled weakly. She panted heavily, not allowing herself to be bewitched by his beauty. This is the Sacred Maiden's courtyard. They will be back anytime. No way. This is not an excuse. Demo Xian supported himself with one hand as the other hand floated onto the young lady's blushing face. His fingertips slowly brushed past her half-open misty eyes. His thin lips curled into a demonic cold arc. Your moans earlier were very enchanting. They are all tactful people. Such a simple sentence made Yi Qing Luo's face burn even more. She bit her lips in embarrassment, avoiding Demo Xian's deliberate teasing. Although the beauty was right in front of her, she also wanted to continue to the last step. But she did not forget. Demo Xian's current condition could not continue. In Demo Xian's body, there was still the existence of the centrifugal force goo. If they were just a little more intimate, the centrifugal goo would make Demo Xian leave her. If he did such a thing, the centrifugal force goo would probably clamor even more fiercely. The last person to suffer was Demo Xian. Now the room was lit with the tranquilizer incense, which stabilized the goo worms in Demo Xian's body. But Yi Qing Luo wasn't sure if Ngongxiang would be able to suppress the corrosion of the centrifugal force goo if this carried on. She could not risk Demo Xian's health. Xian. Yi Qing Luo was thinking about what excuse to use to stop the man who had already gone crazy. However, just as he called out the name, The warmth and scorching heat covering his body abruptly withdrew. The man had already gotten off the bed and was standing by the side. Yi Qingluo was stunned. She wanted to get up, but her whole body was limp without any strength. She could only turn her head to look at Diemo Xian. The man's slender fingers lightly touched her body. His slightly messy robe instantly tidied up. His face regained its usual indifference, and when his eyes looked towards Yi Qingluo, there wasn't a single bit of emotion. Extremely cold. Chapter 28:35. Yi Qingluo's pupils suddenly widened. An ice-cold chill spread through his limbs and spread throughout his body. Her face turned pale. You. What do you mean? Diemo Xian's eyes drooped as he squinted his long peach blossom eyes. His handsome face was icy cold. This lord has no interest in sleeping with you. Yi Qingluo's delicate body on the bed trembled slightly. Her 5 fingers clenched the quilt under her tightly. Her eyelashes trembled as she stared fixedly at Diemo Xian's eyes, with some obscure flickering. The man stood by the bed. Tall and slender, dressed neatly. She looked very noble and graceful. She, on the other hand, was lying on the bed with her clothes half taken off. The sharp contrast made Yi Qingluo's face turn paler. Her pink lips tightened, and when she spoke again, her voice sounded bitter. Diemo Xian, you know very well that it's not that I'm unwilling. Diemo Xian sneered without saying a word. The curvature of his lips was like a smile yet not a smile, which was extremely terrifying. That neither yin nor yang look made Yi Qingluo's anger gushed out for no reason. She clearly knew that Diemo Xian was like this because of the centrifugal worm. But, right now, she was obviously concerned about Diemo Xian's health. It was for Diemo Xian's sake that she rejected such intimacy time and time again. On the contrary, he even took advantage of her and gave her a cold shoulder. She endured Diemo Xian forgetting her. Endured Diemo Xian's indifference. Endured Diemo Xian flirting with her without any feelings. She was full of grievances. Who would understand? Perhaps, she was really a little princess who was spoiled rotten by Diemo Xian. Assassin, after all, couldn't endure the flood of grievances. Her weak body, which was teased by the man, had also recovered its strength. She abruptly sat up on the bed with a sliver of grievance in her eyes. She tugged at her robes tightly as she said through gritted teeth. Do you still want to say that if I don't want to sleep with you, you'll go find another woman who's willing to sleep with you? The young lady's angry words made Diemo Xian's brows suddenly crease tightly. Looking at the young lady's aggrieved face, her pair of charming eyes seemed to be rippling with layers of ripples, as if she was about to cry from grievance. Diemo Xian's heart inexplicably twitched, but very quickly his expression returned to that of desperation. His face didn't reveal any other emotions. He smiled calmly and indifferently, yes. Just one word and Yi Qingluo was about to explode from anger. Was it that interesting to bully her? She lifted her leg and kicked the side of the bed. Go, go, go. Go, I won't stop you. Go now. That leg directly kicked onto Diemo Xian's body. Diemo Xian took 2 steps back from the kick. Then he looked down and stared at the small foot that was still kicking his waist. The owner of that foot was obviously still throwing a tantrum. After the first kick, she was completely unappeased and stuck close to Diemo Xian, wanting to kick again. Diemo Xian frowned as he gripped her leg tightly. Yi Qingluo gritted her teeth and swung hard. Let me go. Didn't you not want to sleep with me? Aren't you not interested in me anymore? Why are you still grabbing my leg? Diemo Xian's eyes darkened as he violently shook off her leg. Following that, he turned around and left the room. Hearing the room door being opened, Yi Qingluo sat by the bed and stood up, wanting to stop him. But thinking of Diemo Xian's extremely cold attitude, her heart felt angry, vexed and wronged. She simply sat on the side of the bed and hugged her own legs, as though he was the only one who had a temper. She had always thought that she was Diemo Xian, who was pampered like a princess. She was poisoned by the centrifugal worm and wanted to become the master. Chapter 28:36. However, after 6 hours had passed, Yi Qingtang's expression changed. Yi Qingluo's grievance was gradually replaced by worry. After Diemo Xian walked out of the room, Yiqing Luo curled up on the bed alone as she kept on grumbling about Dmo Xian. The more she complained, the more wronged she felt. The more aggrieved she felt, the more Yiqing Luo wanted to let Dmo Xian know that she wasn't really a woman who had to pester him and couldn't leave him. It was time to let Dmo Xian have a taste of being treated coldly. Thinking in this way, Yiqing Luo didn't chase after him or search for him. Miao Ji and Miao Yi knocked on the door. Miao Ji's voice was slightly awkward as she asked cautiously, "Miss Yi, is it convenient for us to come in?" "What's inconvenient about it?" Yiqing Luo climbed down from the bed. Miao Ji and Miao Yi pushed the door and walked in, only to discover that Yiqing Luo was the only one left in the room, and Yiqing Luo's expression was extremely gloomy. Miao Ji looked around and asked, "Where is His Majesty?" "We quarreled and he ran away." Yiqing Luo pursed her lips and replied coldly. "Ran away?" Miao Ji's expression changed. Why would they quarrel? In the Saintess courtyard, every garden was filled with goo worms. The overlord already has goo worms in his body. If he provokes other goo worms, it will be very dangerous. Miao Ji's words made Yiqing Luo's eyes flash slightly as her body instinctively tensed up. "Wait for me here with Yi. I'll go look for a venerable sovereign." Miao Ji made a prompt decision. Yiqing Luo hurriedly followed up. "Me too. In this courtyard, besides me, all of you are in danger." Miao Ji stopped him. "I don't want to have to look for you everywhere before I find sovereign." Yiqing Luo's footsteps halted as her face was filled with a complicated expression. After a while, she lowered her eyes and said, "Then I'll have to trouble you. Please help me find Xian." Regarding the Miao Gu, she was in a state where she only had a smattering of knowledge, not to mention whether she could protect herself in the face of those goo worms. He couldn't increase Miao Ji's burden. She could only stay here and wait for news. He watched Miao Ji leave. Yiqing Luo sat silently on the seat by the side. She hung her head and clenched her fists. "Weren't you guys fine just now? Why did it suddenly?" Miao Yi was afraid that Yiqing Luo would be overly worried and let her imagination run wild. So after thinking for a moment, she opened her mouth to ask. She and Miao Ji were outside the door and heard Yiqing Luo and Dmo Xian's intimate voices. Could it be an auditory hallucination? Yiqing Luo's fingers tightened even more. Her voice was very hoarse. "In his eyes I can't feel his feelings for me. My heart is very flustered." She raised her head, and her charming eyes were covered with a layer of clear and moist mist. She pursed her lips tightly, as if she was holding back something. "I clearly know that he was poisoned by the heart separation goo. And he was poisoned because of me, but I still feel wronged." She clenched her fists tightly. "Yi, tell me, am I very selfish? So selfish that I only want him to treat me well, but I don't want to see him acting like he doesn't care about anything. This is not selfishness." Miao Yi walked up to her, reached out her hand, and gently patted her on the shoulder. "Because you love Dizun, and because you love him, you want his response, don't you?" Chapter 28:37. As Miao Yi said that, she sat down beside Yiqing Luo. He held Yiqing Luo's hand and clasped it in his palm. "Qing Luo, my aunt said she has the confidence to find a way to cure the overlord's dual venomous worm. However, because it was a poison that countered each other, his aunt wanted to find a safer method. After the inheritance of King of Venomous Worms ends tomorrow, I will enter the Saint Pavilion and study it with my aunt." She comforted him in a gentle voice. "So just wait for us for a few days. Before my aunt ascends to the upper realm, we will definitely be able to find a way to cure the venomous venom for the sovereign." Hearing this sentence, Yiqing Luo's gaze had some changes. She raised her eyes and looked at Miao Yi. Can the poison in Xian's body really be completely removed? Yes. Miao Yi nodded with certainty. Although Aunt has only been the Miao tribe's holy maiden for 4 years, she still reads the books in the Holy Maiden Pavilion every day. Ordinary people need 50 years to become the Miao tribe's holy maiden before they can ascend to the upper realm. But I only used a short 4 years to ascend. You should believe in my strength. I believe you. Yiqing Luo's eyes finally lit up. The next morning, Miao Ji walked into the room with a tired face. Yi Qingluo hadn't slept the entire night, and when she saw that Miao Ji had returned, her gaze went past her, but she didn't see that familiar figure whom she had been pining for. Miao Ji sighed softly. "I found the overlord. He's fine, but..." She paused and didn't finish her sentence. Yi Qingluo's expression turned indifferent. "It's just that he doesn't want to see me, right?" Miao Ji didn't answer, which was a tacit admission. Yi Qingluo sat dejectedly by the side. Her little fists clenched tightly as she angrily smashed it on the wooden table. "Haven't you already been inflicted with the centrifugal venom, and turned into that noble and elegant, high and mighty overlord? Still acting like a child throwing a tantrum with me, isn't he childish?" Miao Ji and Miao Yi looked at each other. "It's fine if I don't want to see you. After he's cured, I'll see how he'll kneel on the washboard and beg for my forgiveness." Yi Qingluo gritted her teeth as she spoke. Although his mouth was stubborn, in actual fact, Yi Qingluo's heart was finally at ease. It was not important whether Dmo Xian was willing to come back to see her. The most important thing was to ensure Dmo Xian's safety. It could be seen from Miao Ji's expression. Dmo Xian should be in a safe place now. "I've told the overlord about the dangers in the Saint Lady's courtyard." Miao Ji massaged her aching forehead with her slender fingers and continued. "Don't worry too much. The overlord is actually the safest in the Holy Maiden's courtyard. At least, he wouldn't try his best to conceal the fact that Dmo Xian was afflicted with a venomous worm. He intends to stay in the Sacred Maiden's courtyard?" Yi Qingluo pursed her pink lips as she understood the meaning behind Miao Ji's words. Miao Ji put down her hand and glanced sideways at the young girl sitting beside her. "I can see that even though His Majesty has been poisoned by the centrifugal parasite, and should have been swallowed by the parasite, he still cares about you and values you." Miao Yi handed a cup of hot tea to Miao Ji and continued. "I've read Gu books for many years, but I've never heard of anyone who was poisoned by the heart separation Gu would be like Lord Dizun, paying so much attention and care to the person he should be keeping his heart from." Chapter 2838. I know he won't leave me behind. Yi Qingluo's eyelashes fluttered. "No matter if I'm in his memories, he won't leave me behind." She was extremely certain of this. Towards the relationship between her and Dmo Xian, she had always been incomparably confident. "I'm just worried." Yi Qingluo raised her eyes and met Miao Ji's gaze. "His feelings for me are too deep, so he will definitely have to contend against the centrifugal worm in his body. I'm afraid he will fail." According to the past, Dmo Xian was stimulated by the worm and fell into a coma. He would change the mode immediately after he woke up. But this time, Dmo Xian was stimulated by the worm web, but his consciousness was still eroded by the centrifugal worm. This made Yi Qingluo had no choice but to think and worry. Dmo Xian loved her. Even his soul loved her. There was no doubt about this. But now apparently, the time for the centrifugal worm to move was getting longer and longer. If this went on for a long time, Dmo Xian's consciousness might really be eroded by the centrifugal worm. By then, Dmo Xian would really leave her heart. But the love between the two of them, there was a possibility that it would cause Dmo Xian to be unable to take action, and then suffer the torture of the worm. What she didn't want the most was to see this happen. "Go take part in the King of Venomous Worms inheritance ceremony. After you become the Sacred Maiden, come look for me at the Sacred Maiden Pavilion." Miao Ji put down the teacup in her hands and stood up. "I'll go to the Sacred Maiden Pavilion to find the books on this." "Aunt." Miao Yi frowned, obviously not agreeing to her arrangement. Yi Qingluo also stood up. "In order to help me find Xian, you didn't sleep for the whole night. Go rest first." "It's all right, my body, I know." Miao Ji's brows were filled with a gentle smile. Her eyes were gentle as she looked at Miao Yi's direction, as though she was overjoyed by Miao Yi's worry for her. The exhaustion in her eyes was also swept away in an instant. Yi Qingluo and Miao Yi followed behind Miao Ji as they walked out of the Sacred Maiden courtyard. Outside the courtyard, there were several elderly dressed in Miao Elder's attire. Standing at the forefront were the first elder and the second elder. When they saw the three of them, they immediately welcomed them with smiles. Saintess Lady Meow, Lady Yi, you're finally out. Miaoji frowned slightly. Why are you waiting outside the Saintess yard so early? Did something happen? Great Elder Meow looked past Miaoji and at Miao Yi, who was behind her. Then he retracted his gaze and said, Your Highness, we're about to enter the land of the Gu King to carry out the inheritance ceremony of the Gu King. But the Gu King? Miaoji understood. These elders must be worried. Later, the Miao tribesmen and guests would be waiting outside the territory of the King of Venomous Worms. But the King of Venomous Worms was no longer in the King of Venomous Worms land. Yes, it was not only the Miao people who were disorganized. The other guests would probably laugh at the Miao people. They could not afford to take the risk. Miaoji also realized this problem. She glanced sideways at the girl behind her. Miao Yi smiled. Before the ceremony begins, the Gu King will return to the land of the Gu King. Great Elder Miao's expression froze. Chapter 2839. Former clan leader? Former eldest young miss? Miao Yi muttered these two terms softly, as her face revealed a smile which didn't look like a smile. Fifth Elder Miao's face turned pale, as though he was vexed at himself for spilling the beans. But Fifth Elder Miao quickly adjusted his expression, as he continued speaking in a righteous manner. Miao Yi, this elder only wants to know, do you know where the ancient Gu King is? Miao Yi didn't reply, but only looked at him quietly, as she gave a light smile. Yi Qinglua walked up, as she placed one hand on Miao Yi's shoulder, as a similarly treacherous sneer surfaced on her gorgeous face. Miao Yixiong and Miao Rongrong had schemed to frame me and the Overlord. So aren't they already imprisoned in Qinghua Sect's underground prison by Sect Master Yin? No one is allowed to visit them. Her voice was very gentle, with a tinge of a young lady's unique sweetness. Like pearls falling onto a plate, it was extremely pleasing to the ears. But every single word that she said was like a bolt of thunder, exploding heavily in the few elders' hearts. They hadn't even had the time to digest this bolt of thunder, the shock and the emptiness in their hearts. What followed was a powerful aura that covered the sky and the earth, pressing down on them. I wonder how did the various elders see Miao Yixiong and Miao Rongrong? Yi Qingluo's tone suddenly turned gloomy. Fifth Elder Miao instantly felt a chill down his spine, as his forehead started to sweat profusely under this powerful pressure. Second Elder Miao was the first to react, as he immediately gave a dry laugh, trying to break this awkward atmosphere. Miss Yi has misunderstood. What old Five said is, before. Right, that was before. Grand Elder Miao continued. It's not that we believe the previous clan leader's words, but to confirm, in case something goes wrong at such an important occasion later, losing the Miao tribe's face. The two elders laughed dryly, as they tugged Fifth Elder Miao's arm, pulling him back. However, Yi Qingluo and Miao Yi totally didn't follow along with what they said. Instead, a cold smile hung on their lips, as a "do you think the both of us are fools" expression. The smiles on the faces of the elders could no longer be maintained. Great Elder Miao glanced at Miaoji, who was standing at the side and had not said a word since the beginning. With a gentle smile he said, We're about to head to the land of the King of Venomous Worms. Lady Miao, you should know what this means to the Miao tribe. This time Miao Yi spoke. However, the words that came out of his mouth caused the expressions of the elders to darken. She sneered. To be honest, the Miao tribe has no special meaning to me. The reason why I am here and become the candidate for the Holy Maiden is not because I am interested in this position or the Miao tribe, but this is my mother's dying wish. These elders also knew about the grudge from back then. At this moment, their faces were dark and gloomy, and they could not say a word. Miao Yi's rude and arrogant attitude instantly ignited Fifth Elder Miao's emotions. What are you saying? Are you not from the Miao tribe? Don't tell me that the blood flowing in your body is not the blood of the Miao people. Chapter 2840. He sneered incessantly, boiling with hot blood that no one could stop. Ex-eldest Missy is right. People like you do not even have the Miao tribe in your heart. Old Five, what are you doing? Fourth Elder Miao quickly grabbed Fifth Elder Miao. The other elders' faces darkened, but they did not stop him. Obviously, they agreed with Fifth Elder Meow's words. Meow Yi's face gradually turned cold. Fifth Elder Meow seemed to be getting more and more excited as he continued to roar. In my opinion, you don't even know the whereabouts of the king of venomous worms. You just want to destroy the Meow tribe in front of all the guests and tribesmen. He roared the last sentence. Fifth Elder Meow was finally feeling better. His face was full of disdain and mockery towards Meow Yi. His gaze towards Meow Yi was also full of hatred. That's enough, old five. Grand Elder Meow, who had been silent for a long time, called out to stop Fifth Elder Meow. He stopped Fifth Elder Meow and let out a long sigh. Missy Meow, don't blame old five. He is straightforward and never considers the consequences of his words. But what he said is not without reason. He paused and looked at Meow Ji. I know that the Holy Virgin and Missy Meow have a close relationship. Why don't you say something fair? To maintain the dignity of the Meow tribe and stabilize the hearts of the tribesmen. Our request is not too much, right? Meow Ji had been the Holy Virgin for the past 4 years. She had been working with Grand Elder Meow to maintain the prosperity of the Meow tribe. Back then, it was Grand Elder Meow who firmly believed that Meow Yi was a direct descendant under the protection of the King of Venomous Worms, and had been taking good care of her. Over the past 4 years, the two of them could definitely be considered friends. Grand Elder Meow understood Meow Ji's character. Meow Ji also understood that everything Grand Elder Meow did was for the betterment of the Meow tribe. If it had been anyone else, Grand Elder Meow's choice was indeed made for the sake of the Meow tribe. It was not too much, but the target of their questioning. She was the niece that she had found after much difficulty. How could she not protect her? In particular, Elder Meow kept using the words of the former young miss to talk about this matter. Was she purposely trying to disgust her Yi? Meow Ji did not agree with Great Elder Meow's opinion for the sake of the Meow tribe's reputation, as Great Elder Meow expected. Instead, he sneered and looked straight at Fifth Elder Meow. Is your request not too much? She scoffed lightly. Her eyes were covered with a layer of chilliness. Fifth Elder Meow actually knows that Yi is from the Meow tribe at this moment, and that the blood of the Meow tribe flows in her body? Why didn't you know about it before this? Fifth Elder Meow opened his mouth to retort. However, Fourth Elder Meow firmly held him down. This was the holy maiden of the Meow tribe. If the fifth brother dared to argue with the saintess, even if Great Elder Meow were to step forward, he would not be able to plead for old fifth. Meow Ji sneered as she looked at Fifth Elder Meow's suppressed rage. Her smile became even more sarcastic. As for, why did he appear during the saintess selection ceremony? Don't tell me you don't know the reason? Fifth Elder Meow's face darkened. The other elders lowered their eyes, not daring to look at Meow Ji's face. When Meow Yixiong was still in power, when Meow Rongrong was still Missy Meow, Meow Yi's existence was their humiliation. Meow Yi left the Meow tribe because Meow Yixiong and Meow Rongrong forced her to. Now she came back because. Chapter 2841. Meow Ji's words made Grand Elder Meow speechless. He sized up Meow Ji and Meow Yi. This pair of family members who had been separated for many years had finally reunited. From Meow Ji's point of view, it was impossible for her to be like before, where everything was for the benefit of the Meow tribe. Furthermore, based on his understanding of Meow Ji, for Meow Ji to put down her identity as the Holy Maiden and say such things, it was obvious that she was angry. Great Elder Meow calmed his restless heart. At the same time, he was observing the current situation. In his mind, he was quickly thinking of a way to deal with it. He would stand at the entrance of the Saintess courtyard, waiting for Meow Yi. He was just worried that Meow Rongrong's words would come true. The more Meow Yi didn't want him to see the Gu King before the ceremony began, the more Meow Yi wouldn't let him. Grand Elder Meow, who had been brainwashed by Meow Rongrong, was eager to protect the reputation of the Meow tribe. But the more he suspected that Meow Yi and the King of Venomous Worms had nothing to do with each other. If the King of Venomous Worms was not with Meow Yi, then the inheritance ceremony of the King of Venomous Worms would not be able to proceed as planned. Not to mention the Meow tribe's face was completely swept away. Once the other guests and clansmen knew that the Miao tribe's most treasured ancient Gu king had disappeared, what kind of devious thoughts did he have? If the ancient Gu king fell into the hands of someone with ulterior motives, the Miao tribe would definitely be affected. The more Grand Elder Miao thought about it, the more nervous he felt. He was even more determined to not leave until he saw the Gu king with his own eyes. Whereas Yiqing Luo, who was releasing her powerful might by the side, maintained that faintly discernible sneer on her face. A pair of charming eyes stared straight at the few of them. It made their hair stand on end. Great Elder Miao wiped the cold sweat off his forehead. In his heart, he felt a little resentful towards Fifth Elder Miao. Knowing that Yiqing Luo, Miao Rongrong and the others had a deep grudge, and he had to mention Miao Rongrong in front of Yiqing Luo. Wasn't this forcing Yiqing Luo to interfere in this matter? Great Elder Miao looked at Miao Ji's gloomy face again. After some hesitation, he decided to start with Miao Ji. Before he could say anything, Grand Elder Miao saw the girl with a calm expression on her face slowly walk past Miao Ji and toward Fifth Elder Miao. It was Miao Yi. The other elders were stunned by Miao Yi's sudden action. Fifth Elder Miao's livid and furious face also revealed a panicked expression. What do you want to do? Miao Yi's steps were slow. When he was 3 steps away from Fifth Elder Miao, he stopped. There was a smile on her face, and there was a smile in her eyes as well. However, his laughter was filled with contempt, as if he was challenging Fifth Elder Miao's dignity. Fifth Elder Miao had a tyrannical temper to begin with, so how could he endure Miao Yi's mockery? In an instant, Fifth Elder Miao's face and neck turned red. He bared his fangs and brandished his claws as he pounced towards Miao Yi. Fortunately, Fourth Elder Miao understood Fifth Elder Miao's personality. Before Fifth Elder Miao could fly into a rage, Fourth Elder Miao hurriedly held onto Fifth Elder Miao with both hands, preventing him from rushing to his head. Facing Fifth Elder Miao's ferocious face, which was baring his fangs and glaring his eyes, Miao Yi could not help but tremble. Miao Yi just stood there, as she gave a contemptuous and ridiculing smile. Following that, she raised up one finger and spoke calmly. Since elders have accused me of so many crimes in front of me, then I will answer all of you one question at a time. Chapter 2842. Miao Yi's voice paused as she slowly smiled. So it's reasonable for me to stand on Miao tribe's turf. The few elders looked at each other in dismay, not saying a word. Immediately following that, Miao Yi raised her second finger. 2. I concealed my ability because I want to live. After she said that, the few elders' expressions had a subtle change. Indeed, if Miao Yi hadn't concealed her ability back then, the her who had yet to grow up, she would absolutely die in Miao Rongrong and Madame Miao's hands. If it was them, they would also make the same choice. Momentarily, the few elders' gazes started to wander. Pfft! A light laugh was heard from the side. This laughter was as melodious as a silver bell. Yiqing Luo hugged Bear with both her hands as her face was filled with a smile which didn't look like a smile. She looked at the few elders' different expressions as she ridiculed. Fifth Elder Miao can ask such a brainless question. I'm really worried about your brain. A person with this kind of brain like yours can become the Miao tribe's 5th elder. TSK, no wonder Miao tribe has been going downhill for so many years. Fifth Elder Miao was so infuriated that his eyes turned red as he gritted his teeth and clenched his fists tightly, struggling with all his might in an attempt to break free from Fourth Elder Miao. Fourth Elder Miao suppressed his voice. Calm down, calm down. That's Yiqing Luo, the person whom the Overlord dotes on. Fifth Elder Miao was so infuriated that his chest kept heaving up and down, but he could only suppress it in his heart. Yiqing Luo strolled over lazily as her gaze swept past the few elders in front of her. Not only is Fifth Elder Miao's brain not working well, even his words are contradictory. It's so amusing. Yiqing Luo's expression changed slightly. She raised her hand as her slender fingers pressed against her lower jaw, putting on an unfathomable look as she sneered. One moment, you said Yi was coveting Miao tribe's power, coveting Miao tribe's sacred maiden position, and the next moment, it changed to Yi wanting to destroy Miao tribe. She paused as a chilly smile appeared between her brows. The speed of her speech also slowed down as she said word by word. Don't you feel that your words are simply too stupid? Fifth Elder Meow's face turned as black as charcoal. He gritted his teeth so hard that they made cracking sounds. The other elders looked at each other in dismay. The more they looked, the worse their expressions became. The smile on Yiqing Luo's lips grew even more radiant. It was like a blooming rose, exuding a coquettish aura. You all are truly laughable. Yesterday, you all thought that Yi was a rare Miao Gu genius, and racked your brains to make Yi stay. But today, all of you are doubting Yi again. Yiqing Luo's ridiculing laughter made those few elders instantly feel ashamed. I'll say it one last time. Miao Yi's elegant voice sounded out calmly. I chose the Miao tribe and chose to participate in the Holy Maiden selection ceremony because of my mother's dying wish. For my mother's sake, I cannot destroy the Miao tribe. After all, no matter how unbearable this place was, it was also the place where her mother and aunt had been saved. It was also the place where she grew up. Of course, Miao Yi wouldn't say these words out loud. Great Elder Miao stared into Miao Yi's eyes for a long time. In the end, he was defeated. His arms drooped down as he clenched his fists tightly. Forget it. Since you're the one who passed the selection's final round, and Sacred Maiden has already acknowledged you, this elder will believe you this time. Star. Chapter 2843. Saying that, Grand Elder Miao bowed towards Miao Ji and led the other elders back to prepare for the ceremony. They had barely taken a few steps. A young lady's chilly voice was heard from behind. Wait a minute. Grand Elder Miao and the others' hearts tightened. Hearing this voice, they felt a surge of coldness. Their feet subconsciously stopped. The young lady's chilly voice rang once again, and this time, there was a hint of a smile. Elders, don't be in a hurry to leave. You've already asked clearly what you wanted to ask, so next it's my turn. His voice made the elders feel as if a heavy weight was pressing down on them once again. Grand Elder Miao was the first to turn his head back as a Methriya Buddha-like smile hung on his face. Time is pressing and we still have many things to prepare. If Miss Yi has anything to ask us, why not we wait for the King of Venomous Worms to acknowledge the inheritance ceremony before we discuss in detail? I've always not had much patience. Yiqing Luo replied straightforwardly. If I'm impatient, I can't guarantee that I won't get angry in the middle of the ceremony. Her pink lips rose slightly as she smiled lazily. Her tone sounded like a young lady complaining, with a hint of coquettishness. But the few elders could hear the threat in the young lady's words. The expressions of the few elders instantly turned ugly. To be threatened by a young lass. They had lived for more than half of their lives and had always been respected. How could they feel at ease? But because of Yiqing Luo's status, they didn't dare to show their anger. Hurry and ask what you want to ask. If you delay the King of Venomous Worms' inheritance ceremony, you will bear the consequences alone. Fifth Elder Miao was originally very aggrieved, and on seeing Yiqing Luo's arrogance, how could he bear with his anger? Especially Fifth Elder Miao, who was intentionally brainwashed by someone. He totally disliked Yiqing Luo. Miao Yixiong and Miao Rongrong have been released? Yiqing Luo didn't beat around the bush as she directly looked into the few elders' eyes and asked. Fifth Elder Miao's eyes opened wide. What nonsense are you talking about? Grand Elder Miao's eyes flashed as he immediately stood in front of Fifth Elder Miao, putting on his signature amiable smile. Has Miss Yi misunderstood something? The former chief and the former Missy did such a shameful thing to the Miao tribe. How could they be released? As he spoke, he gave Second Elder Miao a look. He gestured to Second Elder Miao to drag Fifth Elder Miao away. Then he continued with a smile. Old Fifth's words were said by the former First Miss and Old Fifth. Old Fifth had always been on good terms with the former clan leader, so he always remembered these words. That's why there was such a misunderstanding. Second Elder Miao and Fourth Elder Miao pulled Fifth Elder Miao away. Miao Yi noticed the commotion and frowned. He was about to open his mouth to stop her, but he caught a glimpse of Yiqing Luo's glare. Miao Yi was stunned and stopped what she was about to say. He could only watch as Fifth Elder Miao was dragged away. Seeing this, Grand Elder Meow breathed a sigh of relief in his heart. The smile on his face became even more amiable. I will find an opportunity to explain the matter regarding the former clan chief and eldest young miss to Old Fifth. Yi Qing Luo only smiled gently, but didn't continue the conversation. Chapter 2844. This time round, Yi Qing Luo didn't stop Grand Elder Meow from leaving. When Grand Elder Meow left, his footsteps were slightly hesitant. After a few steps, he didn't hear the young lady stopping him. Immediately he hastened his footsteps and left speedily. He was afraid that Yi Qing Luo would go back on her words and pester him endlessly. Grand Elder Meow's figure quickly disappeared in front of the three of them. The area outside the Sacred Maiden's courtyard instantly quietened down. Miao Yi's brows creased tightly as she looked at Yi Qing Luo and asked, "Qing Luo, why didn't you let Fifth Elder Meow speak clearly?" Yi Qing Luo's lips curled up slightly as she squinted her eyes with a smile which didn't look like a smile. In the depths of her eyes, there seemed to be a stream of light which kept flickering. This stream of light reflected into Miao Ji's eyes. Miao Ji only felt a chill throughout her body, as though a cold ray had spread from her feet to her entire body. Miao Ji couldn't help but rejoice silently. Luckily her Yi was friends with Yi Qingcheng. If she was an enemy, she was afraid that even she was not Yi Qing Luo's opponent. No need to ask, I can tell that Miao Yixiong and Miao Rongrong should have been released. Yi Qing Luo's voice was calm without any excess emotions. Before coming here, those few elders should have met Miao Yixiong and Miao Rongrong. Miao Ji and Miao Yi had the same feeling about this, but they couldn't believe that this was true. Miao Yi's brows creased even tighter. Those two are the Miao tribe's traitors. They have offended the overlord in Yu, and also offended the Qinghua sect. Those few elders seem to be more selfish and only want to secure their own elder's position. Why would they take such a huge risk to hide the truth about those two people? To those people, we are after all outsiders. Miao Ji gave a cold smile as her lips twitched. Miao Yixiong and Miao Rongrong have been in power for so many years and are completely Miao tribe people. I can confirm that if Miao Rongrong had a chance to make a comeback, they would absolutely not hesitate to kick us aside and help Miao Rongrong up. They can't bear to kick Miao Gu's genius away. Yi Qing Luo scoffed lightly. One becomes Sacred Maiden and the other becomes clan leader. It's a happy ending. Miao Yi and Miao Ji looked at each other, their expressions changing. Although the Miao tribe leader was the tribe leader, his power was not as great as that of the Saintess. The Holy Maiden of the Miao tribe was the true leader of the tribe. If Miao Rongrong became the Saintess of the Miao tribe, even if Miao Yi was the chief of the Miao tribe, she would still be suppressed to the point where there was no room for her to breathe. Miao Yixiong and Miao Rongrong sure have a good plan. Yi Qing Luo's slender brows rose as she looked at Miao Yi. These few elders have apparently been brainwashed by Miao Rongrong, and they don't trust you. If I didn't guess wrongly, later when the recognition ceremony starts, your every action will be restricted. It was just as Great Elder Miao had said. They would never allow any accidents to happen. To prevent Miao Rongrong's words from becoming a reality. This was to prevent Miao Yi from thinking of ways to ruin the Miao tribe during the ceremony. They would carefully control everything about Miao Yi. Those two, what are they planning? What are they trying to do? Miao Ji's expression darkened. Miao Rongrong, don't tell me you're planning to fight for the position of Holy Virgin during the ceremony. Chapter 2845. Miao Ji gritted her teeth. I'll go and watch the inheritance ceremony. I want to see what they're up to. No need. Yi Qing Luo's lips curled up slightly, revealing a calm smile. I'm here, rest assured. Miao Ji wanted to refuse. After all, they were in the Miao tribe, and her identity as the Holy Virgin still had some prestige. However, before Miao Ji could reject him, Miao Yi replied, Auntie, you should go rest and rest. Wait for me to go to Holy Maiden Pavilion to find you. Miao Ji swallowed the words that she was about to say. Miao Rongrong and Miao Yixiong's reputation has been ruined because of what happened to the Qinyu clan. Yi Qing Luo smiled as she looked at Miao Ji. Even if those few elders want Miao Rongrong to become the sacred maiden, that would depend on whether the Miao clansmen agree to it or not. She paused, her eyes curved into a smile. After all, Miao Rongrong, and her own father, performed a scene of taboo love. No matter how magnanimous the Miao tribesmen are, they will not be able to accept this. Then she tilted her head and said, moreover, the main reason why Miao Rongrong and Miao Yixiong ended up like this was because they tried to poison Xian, the great Dizun. Moreover, with my current status and the attitude of the Qinghua sect, is it even possible for Miao Rongrong to become the holy maiden? The two of them listened carefully to Yi Qingluo's words. His eyes instantly lit up. Yi Qingluo's words weren't without reason. Miao Yixiong and Miao Rongrong's deeds were a disgrace to the Miao tribe. Miao Rongrong really wanted to return to the Miao tribe. It was definitely not that easy. Miaoji's heart was immediately at ease. Qingluo, I'm curious. Miaoji recalled Great Elder Miao's reaction. If those two people had really returned from the Qinghua sect, why did Great Elder Miao still dare to ask you to investigate the Qinghua sect? Everyone knew that Yi Qingluo and the leader of the 3,000 Peach Blossoms had a close relationship. All he had to do was ask. The 3,000 Peach Blossoms would soon bring news of the Qinyu sect. The matter of Miao Rongrong and Miao Yixiong being brought out of Qinghua clan would soon reach Yi Qingluo's ears. But Grand Elder Miao seemed as though he wasn't worried that Yi Qingluo would search for news of Qinyu sect. Yi Qingluo's eyes curled into a smile as her eyes shimmered with an additional sense of ridicule. Even if the 3,000 Peach Blossoms went to investigate, the news they would probably bring back would be Miao Yixiong and Miao Rongrong are indeed in the underground prison of Qinyu sect. Those two people. Miao Yi's face paled. Yi Qingluo's gaze gradually sunk as it turned gloomy and deep. Those two people in Elation sect should have been swapped out. Swap. Miao Yi and Miaoji were stunned. Miao Yi clenched her fists in anger. We should have exposed them just now. They want to make it impossible for me to become the saintess in peace, and I will make it impossible for them to conduct the inheritance ceremony in peace. This point you have already done it. Yi Qingluo glanced at her. Miao Rongrong and those elders should be very certain that you don't have the whereabouts of the king of venomous worms on you. So they specially went to the saintess courtyard to force you to hand over the king of venomous worms, so that they could be at ease. You still refused to let him take a look at the king of venomous worms. And adding on to the brainwashing words that Miao Rongrong said to him, he was definitely absent-minded when he conducted the inheritance ceremony, and was in a trance, unable to set his mind at ease. Chapter 2846. Since those elders are unable to completely trust you and have other intentions, then let them carry their last bit of hope and fall into despair. Yi Qingluo's voice was languid with a terrifying charm. Destroy their disloyalty in front of everyone, so that Miao Yixiong and Miao Rongrong have no chance to make a comeback. Let them know, in the entire Miao tribe, only you alone is the person that they truly need to be loyal to. As Miao Yi listened, tears welled up in her eyes. Yi Qingluo's schemes, all to pave the way for her future in the Miao tribe? Looking at Miao Yi's reddened eyes, Yi Qingluo raised her hand and rubbed her head. All right, don't be in a hurry to be touched. After everything has settled down, I don't mind if you repay me with your body. Miao Yi's originally touched heart was tickled by Yi Qingluo's words. She burst out laughing. I don't dare to devote my life to you. I'm afraid His Majesty will tear me apart. The atmosphere returned to a relaxed one. When Miaoji saw this scene, she was relieved. Yi Qingluo was by Miao Yi's side. She did not need to worry that Miao Yi would be humiliated during the ceremony. On the contrary, she should be more worried about those who were seeking their own death and offended Yi Qingluo. Yi Qingluo was so protective of Miao Yi. What she needed to do now was to repay Yi Qingluo, to find the best way to remove the love worm and the centrifugal worm at the same time. The exhaustion from a sleepless night disappeared in this moment of relaxation, and drowsiness rushed to his head. Miaoji pressed the corners of her eyes and waved her hand. Go to the land of the king of venomous worms. I'll go back to my room to rest and wait for your good news. The two looked at each other and smiled. The two of them walked side by side toward the land of the king of venomous worms. He had only taken a few steps. Yiqing Luo acutely sensed something. She frowned and turned to look at a certain place in the saintess courtyard. "What's wrong?" Miao Yi asked. Yiqing Luo's gaze swept the surroundings and didn't detect any other presence before she retracted her gaze. "Nothing much, maybe it's my misperception." She felt as if someone had been staring at her. Yiqing Luo didn't take this episode to heart. Pulling Miao Yi along, they quickly disappeared from the saintess domain. Yiqing Luo didn't know. Not long after she left, a tall and slender figure walked out from the darkness. That figure was like a god, noble and elegant. The figure was dressed in a flowing purple robe, and his black hair was let loose behind him. That cold and peerless face exuded an icy coldness. "Since you want to see her, why do you have to sneak around?" Miaoji turned around and looked at the man behind her. The great Dizun is starting to be sneaky. Mo Xian's expression was cold, his icy cold peach blossom eyes fixed on the direction where Yiqing Luo left. "What you said to this lord last night, is it true?" "Whether it's true or not, the overlord should already know the answer, right?" Miaoji replied in a neither servile nor overbearing manner. "Overlord, you must have felt that Miss Yi is a very special existence to you." Mo Xian's eyes darkened. He tilted his face to the side, and his thin lips moved as he spat out coldly. "The separation curse makes me forget my beloved? That woman is my beloved?" When he asked this question, Mo Xian's tone was obviously stiff, as though he was admitting his inner feelings towards Yiqing Luo. Chapter 2847. Although I'm not sure how much love you and Miss Yi have without the centrifugal worm. Miaoji's smile became gentler. "But I'm sure that you absolutely love her." Mo Xian's pupils contracted as the hands by his side clenched into fists. Miaoji noticed the man's tensed-up emotions. This proved that Mo Xian had indeed taken her words into his head. She smiled. "The reason why I told you about the centrifugal worm is not because I want to use this to build a relationship with the overlord, but..." Miaoji paused as her voice became gentler. "I don't want to see Miss Yi upset." "Difficult?" Mo Xian frowned as he spat out two words in a hoarse voice. "Yeah, after all, she loves you." Miaoji nodded seriously. "You used to love each other so much. She loved you so much, but you don't remember her, and always used sharp words to poke her heart. How could she not be upset?" Miaoji lowered her eyelids. "Last night, didn't I tell the overlord that after you left, Miss Yi was alone in the room, very sad, very upset. Moreover, she didn't sleep last night because she was worried about you." Mo Xian recalled earlier when he saw the obvious greenish-black under Yiqing Luo's eyes. All the muscles in his body tensed up. There was a kind of feeling in his chest. He couldn't describe that feeling. Only his mind was filled with the greenish-black under Yiqing Luo's eyes and the words, "Didn't sleep last night." "Overlord, I just want to give you a piece of advice." Miaoji had been paying attention to the changes in Mo Xian's emotions. Although it wasn't real, but Miaoji noticed it. When he mentioned Yiqing Luo, the atmosphere would always freeze for a moment. It was enough to prove that the current Mo Xian didn't really have no feelings for Yiqing Luo. If you believe in your heart, believe in your first feeling. Then don't do anything to hurt Miss Yi. Miaoji continued to speak. Otherwise, when the poison in your body is cured, the one who will regret it will be you, overlord. Mo Xian's eyes deepened, filled with a deep black. Like a whirlpool, it kept churning in his eyes. He clenched his fists tightly again. After that, his figure flashed and disappeared before Miaoji's eyes. An extremely cold aura rose in the air. Miaoji quietly looked at the direction where Mo Xian had left. He didn't seem to be affected by the cold light at all. Slowly, a smile appeared on his face as he shook his head. Then he sighed softly, turned around, and entered the saintess courtyard. The hour was drawing near. Miao Yi and Yiqing Luo arrived late. Fourth Elder Miao had been waiting on the path to the land of the king of venomous worms. The moment he saw Miao Yi, he rushed forward anxiously. "Miss Miao, you're finally here. Boss and the others have been waiting for you for a long time. After the bell rang, it was time for the ceremony to begin. Now there was only the time it took for an incense stick to burn before the bell would ring. However, the king of venomous worms that Miao Yi said would appear before the inheritance ceremony started was still nowhere to be found. More than 300 tribesmen of the Miao tribe had gathered outside the land of the king of venomous worms. There were also more than 200 guests. Why they were here? Other than witnessing the birth of the Miao tribe saintess, the most important thing was to see how the ancient king of venomous worms looked like. The elders were so anxious that they couldn't even stand properly. Star. Chapter 2848. Miao Yi glanced at fourth elder Miao indifferently. What's wrong? Is there anything wrong with the inheritance ceremony? No. Everything is ready. Fourth elder Miao wiped the cold sweat off his forehead and said anxiously. But, Miss Miao, that ancient Gu King, you haven't. Miao Yi raised her eyebrows and said with a smile. Fourth elder Miao, do you not believe me? No, that's not it. Fourth elder Miao did not dare to say that he did not believe her. He broke out in a cold sweat and said, what I mean is that all the preparations are in place and the time is almost up. First, Miss Miao should send the king of venomous worms back to the land of the king of venomous worms before the guests arrive to prevent others from thinking too much. Miao Yi narrowed her eyes, tilted her head and smiled at the young lady beside her. Qing Luo, do you think I should listen to him and take out the king of venomous worms first? Miao Yi was very clear. With her status, it was basically impossible for her to avoid the control of the elders. For the Miao tribe's reputation, the four elders would definitely join forces to suppress her aura. If he was really suppressed by the four elders at the same time, wouldn't that fulfill Miao Rongrong's wish? So Miao Yi decisively hugged onto Yi Qing Luo's thigh. As long as Yi Qing Luo was around, it didn't matter what tricks those elders wanted to play. They had to consider Yi Qing Luo's identity and the power behind her. As expected, just as Miao Yi turned her words towards Yi Qing Luo, fourth elder Miao's face instantly turned pale. He opened his mouth and tried to stop her several times. However, he couldn't think of any reason to stop him. If Yi Qing Luo's identity was still Yi Luo, even if he had a slight relationship with the overlord, they could still muster up the courage to gamble for the future of the Miao tribe. But Yi Qing Luo was Yi Qing Luo. She was the elder sister of the new leader of the West Continent's Three Springs sect, the strongest student of the best academy, Heavenly Academy, the little hero who saved the students of various continents and saved the West Continent from the calamity of extinction. In addition, as everyone knew, the overlord pampered West Continent's Yi Qing Luo in the palm of his hand. Even his only mount, the nine-tailed white fox, was at Yi Qing Luo's disposal. This was enough to prove Yi Qing Luo's status in the overlord's heart. How would they dare to show any disrespect towards Yi Qing Luo? Fourth elder Miao was begging with all his might, hoping that Yi Qing Luo would not interfere in the Miao tribe's matters. Immediately following that, Yi Qing Luo glanced sideways and met Miao Yi's line of sight as her pink lips rose slightly. Fourth elder Miao's heart was in his throat. Yi Qing Luo chuckled. Of course you can't hand it over. Can't a silly lady like you tell that my heart isn't on your side at all? If you hand over the king of venomous worms, I'm afraid you won't be able to keep your position as the sacred maiden. Yi Qing Luo's reply made fourth elder Miao's heart tremble. His entire face instantly turned deathly pale. He stood stiffly on the spot with a look of disbelief on his face. They couldn't believe that Yi Qing Luo could actually say out their inner thoughts so clearly. They had no intention of leaving any face for their elders. Fourth elder Miao's face sank. He gritted his teeth and frowned. He was infuriated, but he still forced a smile. Miss Yi, what are you saying? Miss Miao is the only direct descendant of the Miao tribe. Of course we will be loyal to Miss Miao. Chapter 2849. Miao Yi put on an obedient look as she nodded. Then I'll hide the king of venomous worms well. Yi Qing Luo's face showed that the child was worth teaching as she replied with a warm smile. And hide it well, Don't let those people with ill intentions steal the king of venomous worms. Fourth elder Meow, who was standing by the side. When did Meow-E become so obedient? Yesterday's aura was fully unleashed. Not long ago when they met, she still had a noble and cold attitude. How did she become such an obedient person now? Furthermore, Yiqing Luo's words. Was she treating him as non-existent? Was he purposely mocking their elder for pretending to obey, but secretly opposing in front of him and harboring evil intentions? Fourth elder Meow was so infuriated that his beard was flying, but on account of Yiqing Luo's face, he could only keep his anger to himself. Unable to ask for the whereabouts of the king of venomous worms, the three of them were getting closer and closer to the land of the king of venomous worms. Fourth elder Meow's heart was getting more and more flustered. This Meow-E was simply impervious to everything. Plus Yiqing Luo was protecting her by her side. Even if they wanted to follow the original plan, to control Meow-E with the four of them, it was impossible. The nearer they got to the land of the king of venomous worms, the more anxious fourth elder Meow was. Looking at the two young ladies in front, chatting happily, his heart was getting more and more anxious. How could the two people in front not feel fourth elder Meow's impatience, as well as his increasingly anxious mood? They only acted as though they knew nothing, like the few disloyal people in the Meow tribe. The more they behaved calmly and freely, the more they scratched their hearts and liver, not knowing. Would the Meow father and daughter pair hiding in the dark be anxious? Very quickly this question was answered. Right at the land of the king of venomous worms, at the entrance of the rear mountain, an old man dressed in a white robe walked over in quick steps. Apparently, this old man had been waiting at the entrance of the rear mountain right from the start, just to block Meow-E. Eldest young Miss Meow, hurry. There's only less than half an incense's time left. You have to hurry and prepare to start the king of venomous worms' inheritance ceremony. The person who came was the slightly plump and amiable-looking great elder Meow. He had an anxious and friendly smile on his face. The moment they met, he wasn't asking about the Goo King, but he was worried that he had missed the best time to inherit. Big brother. Fourth elder Meow clenched his fists and immediately rushed towards great elder Meow. Grand elder Meow glanced at him, but did not say anything. Then he looked at Meow-E, who was standing motionless at the side, and called out, "Young lady Meow." Great elder Meow's attitude has changed so quickly. I can't quite get used to it. A languid voice came from the young lady beside Meow-E. Yiqing Luo leaned lazily on Meow-E's shoulder as she squinted her eyes. Not long ago, didn't Grand Elder Meow put on a questioning expression, wanting Yi to hand over the Goo King first? What's wrong? There's less than the time it takes for half an incense stick to burn left. Great Elder Meow isn't going to ask anymore? He was just that straightforward. It was so straightforward that it made those elders of the Meow tribe who had other thoughts to feel suffocated. Great Elder Meow was indeed Great Elder Meow. After hearing Yiqing Luo's ridicule, there wasn't any change on his expression. He only looked at Meow-E with some guilt as he smiled. Since this elder said that I believe eldest young Miss Meow, then I really believe her. Chapter 2850. She had to admit that Grand Elder Meow's words weren't wrong at all. If it was someone who didn't know the truth, they might really believe Grand Elder Meow. Meow-E's eyelashes fluttered as she slowly raised her eyes and met Grand Elder Meow's eyes. Grand Elder Meow. You really believe in me? Grand Elder Meow's gaze was calm as he gave a calm smile. Of course. After the ceremony, you will be the Meow tribe's sacred maiden. This elder's heart is naturally on your side. Meow-E revealed a smile on her face, but beneath her eyes surfaced a sliver of undetectable ridicule. Her tone was appropriately touched. With Grand Elder Meow's words, I feel assured. Grand Elder Meow still wanted to say something. Fifth Elder Meow's urging voice was heard from behind. Boss, time is almost up. If you have anything to say it on the way. Right, there's not much time left. Grand Elder Meow's face was filled with an amiable smile. Eldest young Miss Meow, please. He stretched out his hand as he gestured for Meow-E to leave first. The entrance to the rear mountain of the land of the King of Venomous Worms was a tunnel that led directly to the King of Venomous Worms' nurturing grounds. Entering from the rear mountain entrance, they just needed to make a few turns, and they would reach their destination. Miao Yi held Yi Qingluo's hand and was just about to leave when she was stopped by Grand Elder Miao. "Miss Yi, please hold on." Miao Yi's petite body stiffened as her eyes flashed. Yi Qingluo's eyes revealed a, as expected, deep meaning as her lips curled slightly as she smiled at Grand Elder Miao. "This is the Miao tribe's secret grounds. Although Miss Yi and eldest young Miss Miao have a close relationship, but ultimately you're not a Miao tribe member, so?" Grand Elder Miao explained in a warm voice. Saying that, he intentionally paused for a moment. Yi Qingluo's brows rose slightly. "Oh, I can't enter?" "This tunnel can only be entered by Miao tribe's sacred maiden, Miao tribe leader, Elder Miao tribe, and the last sacred maiden candidate." Grand Elder Miao revealed a difficult expression. "If Miss Yi doesn't believe me, you can ask the Miao tribe members. This has been the Miao tribe's rule for hundreds of years." "I didn't say I don't believe you." Yi Qingluo waved her hand. "Since it's the Miao tribe's rules, it's not good for me to request the elder to break the Miao tribe's rules for me, so I should abide by it." Just as she finished this sentence, Yi Qingluo could obviously sense that fifth Elder Miao's eyes, which was filled with anxiousness, revealed an unconcealable complacency. Yi Qingluo's eyes flashed past a gloomy glint as the smile on her lips grew wider. "But I have a few words which I wish to speak to Yi alone." Great Elder Miao thought that Yi Qingluo was reminding Miao Yi to be careful and not to trust them too much. But when he thought about the plan they had arranged, it was flawless. He didn't take it to heart. "Time is pressing. If Miss Yi has anything to say, please say it quickly." With that, Great Elder Miao and the other elders took the lead and entered the tunnel. However, after entering the tunnel, their gazes were fixed unblinkingly on the two people who were whispering to each other. They were extremely vigilant. He had witnessed Yi Qingluo's treachery. They could not allow any accidents to happen. However, what they were worried about did not happen. Yi Qingluo only said something to Miao Yi. Following that, she hugged Miao Yi, as though she was cheering for her. After that, she turned around and walked towards the direction of the guest passageway. Grand Elder Miao heaved a sigh of relief. Looked like he had overestimated Yi Qingluo. After all, she was just a 15-year-old young lady. Her experience of mingling in the world was still too tender. Seeing Miao Yi walking towards the tunnel, Chapter 2851. Has Miss Yi left? Fourth Elder Miao looked behind Miao Yi as he intentionally asked. Miao Yi's expression was calm as she revealed a smile. Great Elder Miao and the rest had personally witnessed Yi Qingluo's figure leaving, so they didn't suspect anything as they immediately replied. "Time is of the essence, let's hurry over now." Saying that, he turned around and led the way in front, exchanging a glance with the other three elders. The few of them rolled their eyeballs as they understood what was going on. And fifth Elder Miao was the one who couldn't control the emotions on his face the most. As he walked forward, his peripheral vision kept glancing at Miao Yi. His face was filled with a complacent, sinister smile. The few of them each had their own thoughts. The few of them didn't know. Just outside the tunnel, that young lady who was walking slowly towards the guest passageway. Her steps were stiff and extremely swaying. His blazing red robe seemed to have been extinguished. There was not the slightest bit of vigor in it. When Dmo Xian rushed over, what he saw was the swaying forward, totally unaware young lady. Step by step, she brushed past his shoulder and continued walking forward. The young lady's long hair cascaded down, covering the young lady's face. It made one unable to see the emotions on the young lady's face clearly. The young lady kept her head lowered as she walked forward stiffly. Dmo Xian, who was ignored, frowned as he squinted his peach blossom eyes in displeasure. He quickly chased up and grabbed the young lady's arm as with a flash, he drilled into the dense forest. His wide palm pressed directly on the young lady's shoulder as his deep and hoarse voice was extremely deep. "Yi Qingluo." But the young lady who was pressed against the tree trunk by him didn't show any signs of struggling, nor did she feel any throbbing when she heard his voice. The young lady just quietly lowered her head. There wasn't any fluctuation of emotions. Why? Treating me as if I don't exist? Diemo gave a cold laugh as a dangerous glint flashed past his eyes. The young lady still didn't reply. So calm that there wasn't a single ripple. To the extent that Diemo couldn't even feel the young lady's breathing. Wait a minute. Breathing? Diemo cold face moved as his eyes flashed a few times. He raised his hand and his large palm swiftly went past that long hair as he clasped her lower jaw. Her long hair was forced to scatter, and her face was forced to be revealed. Diemo pupils, upon meeting that face, involuntarily constricted a few times. He spread his arms and tossed the person in his hands out. The red-clothed girl fell to the ground. Under her messy long hair, it was a face without any facial features. In the tunnel, Miao Yi had been vigilantly watching the movements of the four elders. Originally, the four elders were leading the way. And when they were about halfway through the journey, Miao Yi realized that she had been unknowingly surrounded by the four elders in a formation, trapping her in the middle. Walking in front were first elder Miao and fourth elder Miao. Second elder Miao and fifth elder Miao stood behind him. Miao Yi was secretly startled. She had been careful enough. Unknowingly, she was surrounded by a few elders and she was completely unaware of it. Looked like the things which Yi Qing Luo had guessed. Step by step, everything was developing towards reality. Boom! Suddenly, the sound of a stone knocking against the rock wall was heard. At the same time, the surrounding elders who seemed to be walking leisurely, speedily rushed up and surrounded Miao Yi. Chapter 2852. Fifth Elder Miao laughed coldly. Miao Yi, do you really think that you can become the Miao tribe's holy maiden? Ha ha ha, you don't have that qualification. Old 5. Great Elder Miao harshly berated. Even if young Miss Miao might not become the saintess, it is not something you can make up. Miao Yi's eyes flickered. He quickly hid the cold glint in his eyes. How could she not hear it? Great Elder Miao's words sounded like he was trying to clear her name. But in reality, wasn't he silently agreeing to Fifth Elder Miao's words? She might not necessarily become the saintess? As expected of Great Elder Miao. He even calculated all the possible routes of retreat. Miao Yi sneered in her heart, but her face was pale. She frowned and shrank back. What do you mean by that? Fifth Elder Miao kept laughing coldly. Great Elder Miao maintained his smiling expression. Young Lady Miao, there's no need to panic. We just want to confirm if you have the qualifications to become the Miao tribe's holy maiden. Miao Yi's face darkened. She gritted her teeth. Aren't you afraid that my aunt will settle the score with you? Everything I do is for the sake of the Miao tribe. The saintess will understand me. Great Elder Miao replied with a smile. Miao Yi took a few steps back in disbelief. Behind him, he bumped into someone. Second Elder Miao lowered his voice and said, Young Lady Miao, don't be impatient. The holy maiden of the Miao tribe is of utmost importance. I just want to make a final confirmation. As long as you perform well and walk out of the underground world, you will still be the one to become the holy maiden. It sounded like he was advising her to be obedient. Miao Yi struggled to break free from Second Elder Miao's support. She bit her lower lip and glared at the four elders. You all planned this from the start. None of you believed me at all. Miao Yi, who do you think you are? Why should I believe you? You're just a vile spawn born from an outsider who seduced the clan leader. Who do you think you are to be the Miao tribe saintess? Fifth Elder Miao looked at Miao Yi's pale face and felt a surge of joy in his heart. Previously the anger he had suffered under her, and Yi Qing Luo's hands seemed to have found a chance to be vented. Old 5. Don't say another word. Second Elder Miao glared at Fifth Elder Miao. First Miss Miao is protected by the king of venomous worms after all. Even if she's not the holy virgin of the Miao tribe, she'll still be the tribe leader. Second Elder Miao glanced at Miao Yi out of the corner of his eye. It was obvious that he had purposely said it for Miao Yi to hear. Obviously, he wanted to use the position of the Miao tribe's leader to appease her. Miao Yi lowered her head. Her fine long hair covered the expression on her face. It also blocked the slight curve of her lips. Indeed, everything was the same as what Qing Luo had guessed. These people were really shameless. He used the excuse that the Miao people were good. He was scheming against her, taking away the position of saintess that should have belonged to her. He even put on a "you should be deeply grateful" attitude, thinking that letting her become the Miao tribe leader was already thinking highly of her. Heh! Miao Yi's slender fingers tightened one by one. A low chuckle came from her mouth. The few elders who were still looking at each other were startled when they heard the laughter, and looked at Miao Yi. At this moment, Miao Yi had already raised her head. A pair of chilly eyes stared at them coldly. In the tunnel, there was no wind. The wind blew her hair away from her face. Chapter 2853. Miao Yi, you're just a vile spawn born from another clan. Letting you be the clan leader is already giving you a lot of credit. Don't be so ungrateful. Fifth Elder Miao was frightened by Miao Yi's laughter, his voice trembling. He was an old man in his 50s. Frightened by a little girl? This was something that Fifth Elder Miao did not want to admit. Immediately, the words that came out of his mouth became even more venomous. If it wasn't for the protection of the king of venomous worms, do you really think that you can live until now? You even tried to occupy the king of venomous worms, and ruin the reputation of the Miao tribe? Let me tell you, if you don't hand over the Gu King today, don't even think about walking out of this tunnel. Old 5. Great Elder Miao sounded a little angry. You go to the land of the Gu King, and tell the people of the Miao Gu tribe that there is one more candidate for the position of saintess. Now the elders have added a competition. The ceremony of the Gu King's inheritance will be postponed to 2 hours later. Fifth Elder Miao was instantly terrified by Great Elder Miao's roar. He stared venomously at Yi Qing Luo, but still listened to Grand Elder Miao's orders, to inform them of this matter. Miao Yi pursed her red lips. According to the Miao tribe's rules, matters regarding the selection of the Holy Maiden must be decided by the Miao tribe's Holy Maiden. I don't think my aunt knows about the addition of a competition. What you are doing is breaking the rules of the Miao tribe. Great Elder Miao's amiable smile froze. He did not expect Miao Yi to be so familiar with the rules of the Miao tribe. Just as the few elders were silent, another pebble was knocked on the rock wall, accompanied by the woman's bell-like laughter. Miao Yi, don't call me aunt. 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 Do you think that you can be fearless in the Miao tribe just because you have the saintess as your backing? Don't forget, your aunt, she is not from the Miao tribe at all. His voice reminded the elders of the situation, especially when she heard the last sentence. The faces of the 3 elders immediately turned ashen. Miao Ji was indeed not from the Miao tribe, because Miao Ji was the previous saintess, Miao Shui, who had pushed her to the position of saintess. Miao Ji had indeed done well in the past few years. Because of that, the elders subconsciously neglected Miao Ji's identity. Now he was reminded by the woman. They immediately broke out in cold sweat. He felt that for so many years, an outsider had been in charge of the Miao tribe. If they were not careful, wouldn't the Miao tribe be destroyed by an outsider? The woman laughed maniacally as she walked out from the darkness. The woman was dressed in a jade green dress and looked like a green lotus. When she saw the woman's face clearly, Miao Yi narrowed her eyes and said in a cold voice, "It really is you, Miao Rongrong." Miao Rongrong raised her eyebrows and looked Miao Yi up and down with a smile. "It really is me? So you already knew it was me? Other than you, who else could have the elders of the Miao tribe come up with such a plan?" Miao Yi met Miao Rongrong's eyes coldly. "What exactly do you want to do? Don't you understand what I want to do?" Miao Rongrong giggled. She looked at Miao Yi with a venomous gaze. Miao Yi's face darkened. Her gaze slowly shifted to Great Elder Miao. "Great Elder Miao, don't you know that she escaped from the dungeon of Qinghua clan? How can a fugitive compete with me for the position of saintess?" Chapter 2854. The meaning behind his words was, whether Miao Rongrong was a fugitive or not, it would be decided after the competition. If she won against Miao Rongrong, she, Miao Yi, would be the holy lady of the Miao tribe, and Miao Rongrong would still be a fugitive. But if she lost to Miao Rongrong would no longer be a beggar. Hearing Great Elder Miao's shameless words, Miao Yi laughed angrily. It looks like Great Elder Miao doesn't know what conscience is at all. You can even accept a fugitive without any misgivings. This young lady really admires your big face and big heart. Being ridiculed by a junior, Elder Miao was not angry. Great Elder Miao did not get angry. If young Mistress Miao is confident in her own abilities, she would not be afraid of another match. Is this a question of competition? Miao Yi's face was full of disdain. I am the dignified Miss Miao, the only direct descendant of the Miao tribe recognized by the Gu King. She is a fugitive who would not even let her own father off. What right does she have to compete with me? Why should I give her this chance? Miao Yi was not at a disadvantage when she started to speak viciously. Moreover, she purposely targeted Miao Rongrong's sore spot. Miao Rongrong felt a tearing pain in her heart from these words. Her face was livid as she gritted her teeth and roared. Miao Yi, are you afraid of competing with me? I am not afraid of a woman who would have sex with her own father. Miao Yi retorted with a sneer. Miao Rongrong's face was even more livid. There was no trace of her previous arrogance. Since you are not afraid, then compete with me. Do you think that I am someone that can be provoked by any Tom, Dick, or Harry? I look down on someone who would have sex with her own father. Comparing with you lowers my status. Miao Yi continued to sneer as she looked at Miao Rongrong mockingly. You. Miao Rongrong's face was red with anger. Her petite body was trembling uncontrollably. Why was this Miao Yi so sharp-tongued? She had poked at her sore spot again and again. She was just a vile spawn. What right did she have to be so arrogant and act all high and mighty? She, Miao Rongrong, was the true Miao tribe. A Miao person who could truly become the holy maiden of the Miao tribe. Great Elder Miao, aren't you afraid of being ridiculed by letting this kind of trash become the Miao tribe's holy maiden? Miao Yi looked at Great Elder Miao after mocking Miao Rongrong. Her face was full of mockery. Or should I say, what Great Elder Miao cares about is whether the Miao tribe's holy maiden is of pure Miao bloodline? Miao Yi had directly pointed out his thoughts. The amiable smile that Great Elder Miao had maintained all this time also froze for a moment. Great Elder Miao, why waste your breath on her? I think she's simply afraid of me and doesn't dare to compete with me. Miao Rongrong sneered and puffed out her chest. You're just a bastard. Yet you have the nerve to strut around in front of me. You're just a bastard who was born without a father. The coldness in Miao Rongrong's eyes intensified. Miao Yi knew that she had stepped on her sore spot. Didn't she know how to trample on Miao Yi? However, Miao Yi's reaction completely exceeded Miao Rongrong's expectations. Miao Yi's expression did not change in the slightest. She just smiled coldly and stared at her with a face full of mockery and disdain. That's right. A child like you who was born by a mother and taught by a father has been taught to roll around with your own father. Then, after pausing for a few breaths, she shrugged. I don't dare to have a father who can roll around with his own daughter. Miao Rongrong exploded in anger. Chapter 28:55. Miao Yi dodged to the side and grabbed hold of Fourth Elder Miao, who was trying to stop her. Then she pulled him hard. Before Fourth Elder Miao could react, he was pulled by Miao Yi and staggered a few steps forward. Miao Rongrong's sharp nails scratched Fourth Elder Miao's face. Ah! Fourth Elder Miao screamed and raised his hand to cover his face. At the same time, Miao Yi loosened her grip on his hand. Fourth Elder Miao's face was scratched by the sudden pull, and he did not even have the time to steady his footing. Miao Yi loosened her grip. Once again, his body fell forward uncontrollably. Miao Rongrong, who had scratched Fourth Elder Miao's face, realized that she had lost her composure and scratched the wrong person. She panicked. When Fourth Elder Miao pounced on her, Miao Rongrong did not have time to react. She was pinned to the ground by Fourth Elder Miao. Miao Rongrong's delicate body fell heavily on the ground. There was also an old man's aura pressing down on his body. It was a hard and heavy body. She felt as if her internal organs were being squeezed by something, and she coughed violently. She felt a fishy taste in her throat, and then she spat out a mouthful of blood. Get lost! Get lost! Meow Rong Rong roared in a hoarse voice. Fourth Elder Meow's chest was hurting from the woman's impact. He could hear Meow Rong Rong's roar. He remembered that half of his face was scratched by Meow Rong Rong's claws. Then he heard Meow Rong Rong's disdainful tone, and how she pushed him away. Fourth Elder Meow's expression turned grim. He raised his hand and pressed it hard on Meow Rong Rong's shoulder. This is really an eye-opener. Suddenly, a girl's crisp voice made the two people who were entangled on the ground stop their movements. The girl's voice carried a faint smile, full of mockery. The girl tilted her head and blinked her beautiful eyes. She smiled at Great Elder Meow and said, "So Great Elder Meow has such a taste. Great Elder Meow has taken a liking to Meow Rong Rong not because she's from the Meow tribe, but because she's flirtatious and frivolous enough. It's because she's able to roll around with her own father and accept all of you without any qualms, right?" Great Elder Meow's expression turned extremely ugly. He was so angry that his bones were trembling. Meow Yi's words were truly unbearable to the ears. Even Great Elder Meow, who was used to seeing the world, felt his face start to turn red when he heard Meow Yi's words. "Meow Yi, what nonsense are you spouting?" Meow Rong Rong's eyes widened when she heard Meow Yi's mocking words. She shoved Fourth Elder Meow and roared, "It's you. You deliberately set me up. You're the one who pushed this old fart onto me. Meow Yi, you're so sinister." The old fart, on Meow Rong Rong's body. While Fourth Elder Meow was still in a daze, he was pushed aside by the crazed Meow Rong Rong. Meow Rong Rong did not even look at Fourth Elder Meow. She quickly crawled up from the ground and forcefully wiped away the bloodstain at the corner of her lips. Her eyes were vicious and filled with a crazy storm. "Meow Yi, you bitch. You want to stop me from becoming a holy lady, right? I want to be a holy lady. I want you to live a hellish life from now on." As Meow Rong Rong spoke, her delicate little face was savage and crazed. She roared and raised her hands high in the air. Her messy black hair danced wildly behind her. Vaguely. Chapter 2856. Second Elder Meow hurried over and helped Fourth Elder Meow to his feet. He looked at Fourth Elder Meow's bloody face and the elder robe he was wearing, which was stained with Meow Rong Rong's blood. "That be *tzich. How dare she treat me like this when I've helped her so much?" Fourth Elder Meow gritted his teeth as he wiped the blood off his face. Second Elder Meow lowered his voice. "That's enough. It's because she's a true Meow. If she can't surpass Miss Meow, we'll just kill her later. That will appease our anger." Fourth Elder Meow angrily flung away his blood-stained hand. His eyes were hazy. "If she can't become the holy maiden, I'll skin her alive." At that moment, Great Elder Meow's expression suddenly changed. He shouted, "Meow Rong Rong, what are you doing?" However, Meow Rong Rong, who was shrouded in darkness, did not seem to hear Great Elder Meow's voice. She was completely immersed in her own world. Second Elder Meow and Fourth Elder Meow immediately looked in the direction of the voice when they heard it. They saw Meow Rong Rong's body twitching as if she had gone mad. Her face, which was exposed from time to time under her messy hair, was twisted with ecstasy. She was so ferocious that she did not look like a normal person at all. The three elders felt a chill down their spines as they looked at Meow Rong Rong. Meow Yi, on the other hand, looked calm as she stared at Meow Rong Rong's fluttering hair and emerald green robe. After staring at her for a while, Meow Yi tilted her head and said faintly, "Oh, you mean Meow Rong Rong's appearance here is a scheme?" After a while, Meow Yi asked in confusion, "What's her motive?" There was silence in the air. The three elders stared blankly at Meow Yi, who was mumbling to herself. When they looked at her again, she was surrounded by a dark aura. Meow Rong Rong was extremely strange. At that moment, the three of them looked at each other and couldn't help but shudder. Meow Yi narrowed her eyes and smiled. "So that's how it is. Meow Rong Rong is just a pawn." "Meow. Miss Meow. Who are you talking to?" Great Elder Meow forced himself to remain calm as he looked at Meow Yi. Meow Yi raised her eyebrows and looked at the three elders. Her smile deepened as she narrowed her beautiful eyes. She did not answer Great Elder Meow's question. Instead, he seemed to be answering someone's question. Save them? No, no, no. They invited a wolf into the house and are seeking their own deaths. It has nothing to do with me. Why should we save them? As if she had heard something, Miao Yi giggled. They did not treat me as a member of the Miao tribe, so I naturally did not need to treat them as my people. After these words were spoken, no matter how stupid the three elders were, he also understood that the them in Miao Yi's words of saving them was referring to them. He looked at Miao Yi's teasing smile. Great Elder Miao's heart sank for a moment. There was an ominous premonition spreading from the bottom of his heart. Strange, it was too strange. This Miao Yi was definitely not playing tricks by talking to herself for no reason. Who was Miao Yi talking to? What did she mean by save? The more Great Elder Miao thought about it, the more flustered he became. He furrowed his white brows and quickly walked toward Miao Yi. Miss Miao, what do you mean by that? What is this? It's coming. Chapter 2857. These two words caused Great Elder Miao's expression to change abruptly. He instinctively turned his head. Behind him, the strange Miao Rongrong who was originally standing at the end of the tunnel had stopped convulsing. Her black hair danced wildly behind her, baring its fangs and brandishing its claws. Her jade-green robe was now wrapped in a black aura. Her hands were hanging limply by her sides. Her whole body seemed to be out of energy. A face filled with a sinister smile was revealed under the long hair. Her delicate face was twisted into an extremely horrifying expression. In this narrow tunnel, there were luminous pearls all around. The few elders could clearly see the black gas that kept darting around Miao Rongrong's horrifying face. Great Elder Miao's pupils shrank. What's going on? Miao Rongrong is. They looked at each other. Miao Rongrong was like a puppet that was being controlled. There was no puppet that belonged to her soul. She looked extremely strange. Even the experienced and knowledgeable Great Elder Miao couldn't help but feel his scalp go numb. Second Elder Miao immediately recalled Miao Yi's soliloquy, and his expression changed as he quickly walked towards Miao Yi's direction. Young Miss Miao, you know what's going on, right? What's wrong with her? Miao Yi looked at Miao Rongrong's direction with a smile that didn't look like a smile. You've let a wolf into the house. Don't you know that this wolf is preparing to eat people? The faces of the three elders darkened and turned extremely unpleasant. Still can't tell? The Miao people that you've been thinking about have been completely controlled by another force. Miao Yi didn't care about their emotions as she kindly reminded them. After the three elders saw Miao Rongrong's situation, they indeed thought so. But hearing Miao Yi say it with an incomparably firm tone, their hearts couldn't help but tighten. Controlled? What kind of force could actually control a person? And they hadn't discovered it for so long? Haven't any of you thought about how she, Miao Rongrong and Miao Yixiong got into that kind of trouble? Offended Dmo Xian. And was imprisoned in the Qinghua sect's dungeon. How did she manage to escape from the Qinghua sect without attracting any attention? Miao Yi saw that the three elders were silent for a long time, so she continued to speak on her own. His words caused the faces of the three elders to alternate between green and white for a moment, then red and ashamed for a moment. Jia jia jia. Suddenly, a strange, hoarse laugh rang out in the tunnel. Hearing this made one's hair stand on end. Miao Yi, after following Yi Qingluo, that little slut, you've become smarter. That hoarse voice, laughter, was filled with madness and hatred. Miao Yi raised her eyebrows, but there was no fear on her face. It seems that I was right. Miao Rongrong twisted her body stiffly. Step by step, she walked toward Miao Yi on the black air current. The sinister and twisted smile on her face became even more pronounced. So what if I'm right? From the moment you stepped into this tunnel, I've never intended to let you leave this place alive. Miao Rongrong laughed maniacally, as her eyes turned hazy. And you bunch of old farts. I want all of you to die. Go to hell. The three elders were so frightened by the vicious and strange Miao Yi that they took a few steps back. Whereas Miao Yi was still standing there. She didn't even avert her gaze. Chapter 2858. Even though Miao Rongrong walked over with a body full of ruthlessness and a body full of black aura, Miao Yi did not react at all. Miao Rongrong's footsteps stopped 3 steps away from Miao Yi. His face was twisted to the extreme. His eyes were empty and filled with hatred as he stared straight at Miao Yi. Kill me? Miao Rongrong, what a pity, you don't have the chance. Miao Yi smiled at Miao Rongrong's gaze. This smile made Miao Rongrong's hatred and anger even more intense. Those eyes that were filled with black mist seemed to be surging with raging flames. No chance? I want to see how long you can be so stubborn. Miao Rongrong roared angrily. She raised her hand and slammed it on the wall beside her. In this narrow tunnel, the earth trembled and the mountains swayed. Gravel rolled down the wall and splashed on the ground. The 3 elders were shocked by Miao Rongrong's sudden craziness, causing their bodies to tense up. Great Elder Miao was the first to react. He forced himself to calm down. Miao Rongrong, this elder has decided to give you a fair chance. Why must you do this to yourself? Chance. Miao Rongrong snorted. She looked at Great Elder Miao with contempt and disdain. Do you think I don't know? Your so-called chance is just to use me to test this little slut's true strength. I just want to know if this little slut is qualified to become the Miao tribe's holy maiden. Great Elder Miao's face turned red. Miao Rongrong had clearly seen through his thoughts. Miao Rongrong sneered disapprovingly. The reason why I became like this, condemned by everyone and ashamed to appear in front of anyone, is all because of you. It's all because of you. I want to take back everything that belongs to me and send all those who harmed me to hell with my own hands. The more she spoke, Miao Rongrong's voice was filled with a demonic murmur. Great Elder Miao wanted to explain, but the current Miao Rongrong had completely fallen into her own madness. Thick black mist was released from Miao Rongrong's body. Following that, a shocking scene unfolded in front of everyone's eyes. The thick black mist was behind Miao Rongrong. Mass after mass, the black gas gradually spread and expanded. In the blink of an eye, the ball of black chi suddenly dissipated. Instead, they were 5 tall and burly men dressed in black robes. Miao Yi's gaze landed on the 5 men's chests and sleeves, when she saw the large U embroidered on them. His pupils suddenly constricted. She frowned. Guards from the Palace of Darkness? Weren't these people wearing the clothes of the Palace of Darkness guards that Yan Jinfei had led yesterday? These people were from Dark Shadow Palace. Dark Shadow Palace. The elders looked at the guards in disbelief, thinking about how strong the guards of Abyss Palace were. Their faces were pale with fear. Miao Yi's expression finally turned serious. Miao Rongrong, you're working with the Palace of Gloomy Shadows. Are you scared now? Miao Rongrong sneered, her eyes filled with madness. Any random guard from the Palace of Darkness is stronger than you bunch of trash. Miao Yi, I'll let you know what's called a fate worse than death. Miao Rongrong laughed even harder. The crazier it was, the black aura in her eyes grew thicker. Chapter 2859. Miao Yi frowned and looked at a place on her shoulder, asking in a low voice, the mastermind is the Palace of Darkness. What is their goal? Miao Yi didn't get an answer. Miao Rongrong was already charging towards her face with the black aura. At the same time, the 5 guards of the Abyss Palace moved as well. They dashed towards the few elders at high speed, facing the attack of the Palace of Darkness guards. The hearts of the 3 elders were instantly filled with shock. They felt a bone-cutting hurricane coming towards them. They wanted to dodge, but they couldn't escape from the aura of the guards. Bang bang bang. A few heavy objects fell to the ground. There were also screams and noises. The few elders slammed into the rock wall in unison. Then they smashed into the ground. The ground was filled with broken rocks. They cried out in pain. After the Palace of Darkness guards dealt with the 3 elders, he immediately turned around and charged in Miao Yi's direction. Miao Rongrong's attack on Miao Yi. Miao Yi didn't have any intention of fighting back, just dodging with all her might. Miao Yi's speed wasn't fast. It definitely wasn't agile. But every time, she would be able to dodge before Miao Rongrong's attack landed. After a few moves, The three elders were thrown to the ground. Miao Rongrong didn't even touch the corner of Miao Yi's clothes. Miao Rongrong couldn't believe it. This bastard sister, who she had always looked down upon, had actually climbed over her head one day. Miao Yi was obviously a piece of trash. The more Miao Rongrong thought about it, the more resentment she felt. The black energy in his eyes continued to fly about. When the few guards from the dark secluded palace flew over to help, In Miao Rongrong's eyes, all kinds of emotions appeared, and her killing intent swelled in that instant. Miao Yi, go and die, she screamed in a hoarse voice. As she laughed maniacally, she gathered the black energy in her palm and slapped towards Miao Yi's face. No matter how Miao Yi dodged a pincer attack from all directions, Miao Yi wouldn't be able to escape. Thinking about it, Miao Rongrong's sinister smile became even wider. Ah! Suddenly, a scream pierced through the tunnel. A few of the elders who were lying on the ground vomiting blood forcefully propped themselves up and looked over. However, he saw that Miao Yi was standing there unscathed. There was not a single wound on her body, nor was she messy or disheveled. At this moment, a bewitching red light slowly enveloped the entire tunnel. It was like a protective shield. It wrapped around Miao Yi tightly. The elders were shocked and stared in that direction in disbelief. Only then did he notice. As it turned out, the moment the guards charged at them from all directions, Lin Fan's eyes lit up. A red light suddenly shot out from Miao Yi's shoulder. That red light was like a raging flame, rapidly encircling Miao Yi's body. They formed streaks of red light that looked like burning flames. Miao Rongrong was shocked by this scene. He could only watch as the flowing light that lingered around him slowly turned into a slender figure in front of him. That figure stood in front of Miao Yi. Miao Rongrong's hand that was about to strike down was forcefully held in midair by a force. Gotcha! The bones in her wrist were broken. Miao Rongrong only had time to scream. Then, he felt a majestic and tyrannical aura that sent the guards surrounding him flying. Chapter 2860. The light and sweet-sounding laughter was like the ringing of a silver bell. In this narrow and long tunnel, it appeared to be extremely illusory. That laughter was so pleasant to the ears that it made one's heart flutter. But unfortunately, it made one's scalp go numb. Miao Rongrong was the latter. The familiar voice was obviously laughing, but Miao Rongrong could hear the malice in the laughter. Yi Qingluo. Yi Qingluo. Why are you here? Miao Rongrong stared in horror at the young lady who gradually appeared in the flames. Miao Rongrong couldn't believe her own eyes. She had seen it with her own eyes. The flowing light surrounding Miao Yi was a butterfly fluttering its wings, the size of a palm. Its entire body was like a raging flame, blood red. As it fluttered its wings, it seemed like fresh blood was flowing. It was extremely bewitching and strange. After that, Miao Rongrong saw that flowing light butterfly, in front of her eyes, turned into a familiar and horrified figure. Yi Qingluo's appearance. Not only Miao Rongrong was shocked, the other three elders also sat up from the ground in shock. They had even forgotten about the injuries on their bodies. Their minds were filled with Yi Qingluo, who had transformed from a butterfly into a human form. They had seen Yi Qingluo leave with their own eyes. They had also seen Miao Yi, alone, walking into the tunnel. How did Yi Qingluo enter? That butterfly, what was going on? Just as everyone's hearts were pounding in fear and shock, Great Elder Miao's mind suddenly flashed past a thought. He patted the rock wall fiercely. Is this the legendary Substitute Gu? Substitute Gu? This name of the Gu art came out from Great Elder Miao's mouth. The other two elders' faces instantly turned pale. They turned their gazes towards Miao Yi. This Substitute Gu, it's you. It's you who cast it. Great Elder Miao's tone was filled with obvious cautiousness and probing. Miao Yi took a look at them, without even the slightest hope of replying. To these few elders, Miao Yi no longer had any good impression of them. Yesterday, they were still arguing about her being a Miao Gu genius. Today, after hearing Miao Rongrong's provocation, she believed Miao Rongrong. From the beginning to the end, This group of Meow people had never treated her as a real Meow person. The only reason why he kept her was because of her talent in Meow Gu. Strength. It was not even comparable to the so-called bloodline. To think that they kept saying that she, Meow Yi, was the real direct descendant of the Dragon King. Such words were truly laughable when compared to what they had done. However, Meow Yi did not reply. Meow Rongrong could not remain calm. Substitute Gu? She was just a waste. How could she know the legendary venomous technique of the Meow tribe? Looking at the entire Meow tribe's history of saintesses, there are probably no more than 3 who can use substitute Gu. Substitute Gu. It was a long-lost Gu technique of the Meow tribe. This Gu technique could use Gu worms to transform into the appearance of the substitute Gu that the host wanted. This substitute Gu was used to refresh one's mind. As one's proficiency in this kind of Gu technique increases, the time it can exist will become longer and longer. Especially towards the end. It could even pass off as the real Gu. No one could tell who was the real one. However, this kind of Gu technique, a long time ago, it had been lost to the world. Even if Meow Yi was a Meow Gu genius, it was impossible for her to learn this long-lost legendary Gu technique. Chapter 2861. Slut? Meow Rongrong, do you think you have the right to say these 2 words in front of me? Meow Yi sneered. The bewitching red glow around her gradually dissipated. That young and tender face was filled with coldness. Meow Yi's hands were clenched tightly. This was the anger that came from the deepest part of her heart. After enduring for so many years. Today, she didn't want to endure any longer. She didn't want her mother to bear the infamy of seducing her husband and giving birth to a vile spawn. She wanted everyone to admit that she, Meow Yi's mother, was the real Madame Meow. The angrier Meow Yi got, the calmer her expression was, like still water. This was what Yi Qing Luo taught her. No matter how her heart was in turmoil, don't express it directly on your face. Once she could see her thoughts from her face, that meant that she was going to lose. Facing Meow Rongrong, she would absolutely not lose. Meow Yi's eyes flashed past a resolute glint. You. What are you looking at? Why am I not qualified? Isn't your mother a slut? Didn't your mother seduce my father and snatch my mother's man? Your mother, that slut, gave birth to you knowing that my mother is here. Aren't you a vile spawn? Meow Rongrong didn't want to admit that she was terrified because of Meow Yi's gaze. She straightened her neck, retorting and questioning. Little by little, the black air flowing in her eyes covered the whites of her eyes. It made Meow Rongrong look extremely strange and terrifying. Meow Yi's lips curled up coldly as she stared straight at Meow Rongrong, saying word by word. Meow Rongrong, these few elders should be the clearest about what happened that year. Was it my mother who snatched your mother's man, or your mother, who knew that Meow Yixiong and my mother were together, still shamelessly sticking to her? Meow Yi pointed behind her, at the row of elders lying on the ground, as her smile deepened. It was my mother who got together with Meow Yixiong first. And your mother merely used her power in the Meow tribe to snatch Meow Yixiong. Speaking of which, I'm a few months older than you. Don't you know who's the bastard here? You. Nonsense. Meow Rongrong's face turned red from Meow Yi's barrage of words. There was no need to ask the elders about these things. Meow Rongrong herself was very clear about this. It was precisely because she clearly knew that she was younger than Meow Yi by a few months. That was why she had used all means to torture Meow Yi since she was young. However, Meow Yi, a good-for-nothing that she had always looked down on, had brought all of this up in the open. Meow Rongrong was about to go crazy. She pointed at Meow Yi furiously. B*TC. You bastard. You even want to frame me, an orthodox Meow. I'll kill you. I'll kill you. Beside him, the few guards from the Abyss Palace charged towards Meow Yi. His speed was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, only a few shadows could be seen. Meow Yi's eyes were cold, but she did not panic at all. He was filled with anger and hatred towards Meow Rongrong. He had already blocked everything that made her afraid and fearful. Meow Rongrong, you haven't even given me an explanation about what happened between us. And you still want to touch the person I want to protect in front of me? A sweet and coquettish voice rang faintly. You're tuning in to the Lee May's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.